Big news, big news, big news, everyone. Appreciate everybody being here at the Voice of College Football on a Monday night with 4 weeks and counting down to the beginning of the college football season. We have to wait longer than any sports fans on the globe, on the planet, for our sport to play. The longest offseason in college football, the longest offseason in sport, college football, finally coming close to an end. And of course, we'll be ready here at the Voice of College Football. And that's one of the big reasons why we have a special announcement to make tonight. And we are celebrating tonight and celebrating with all of you as we lay it out for everyone in regards to our coverage of college football here at the Voice of College Football, which entails not just our main channel here, but our 22 to 23 team channels. I haven't counted recently, so we're somewhere in the 20s, 22 or 23 team channels. So pardon me if I'm off by one or two, because many of you have been so kind to go out there and subscribe to tons of them. So I appreciate that so much. So I will let you know that maybe the best news of the night is that for this college football season, you're not going to have to stare at me and listen to me for an entirety of college football coverage for the entire Saturday. For those of you who have been with us long enough to go back to 2020, you know what we do here on the main channel is basically I show up between game windows, typically around 3:15, something in that range in the afternoon to recap those noon games. And then we repeat the cycle throughout the broadcast day as we recap the games and preview the games and talk to all of you and open up the phone lines and have a great time talking college football throughout the day. But with our explosion of team channels, we wanted to provide for all of you an outlet of more specific post-game coverage. So beginning this season, we are, and I hate to stop at whatever the count is right now, but because we're continuing to talk to people to continue to build our team of post-game hosts. And so we will start with the program that for the time being still has the lead when it comes to all-time wins. And it's very close when it comes to winning percentage. And they want to say, hail to the victors. We are still number one all time. So we got Desmond Upshaw. We want to introduce Desmond to everybody out there. Desmond, how you doing tonight?
I am doing awesome, Mark. Doing awesome. I'm actually on the West Coast with a little family vacation, which we talked about. So I'm in California, so it's only 4 o'clock here. So it's been a great vacation, but super excited to get rolling with the with the podcast and working with you. So excited.
So Desmond, we are definitely not going to hold you back from your vacation. We don't want to do that for too long because that is special time. I know that I don't want anyone bothering me on my vacation, but we appreciate you jumping on board here.
For sure, it's fun. It's fun. This isn't work as far as talking sports and football. I enjoy it. And it's been just super fortunate. Like I said, to be able to work with you. Have followed your channel and, just all of the different things that you're doing with the podcasting. And, so I'm really excited. So, it's been good. So like I said, definitely, excited to get rolling.
So folks, as you can see on the banner below, it's Desmond Upshaw. You can catch him on the Dre and Des podcast. Where can people find that?
Yes, you find it on Spotify, on Apple, Google Podcast. We are also on Instagram as well. So wherever you find your podcast, we are there. So
there you go, folks. Pretty much any of your favorite audio platforms, you just go right there. Dre and Des podcast. Give it a shout. Give it a shot. And certainly, I did so. I was like, who am I getting involved with? Well, I listened to a couple shows and man, that the guy can deliver it. And I think you can see based on the energy and the smile, he's a tremendous addition here to our Michigan football coverage. So basically what you're going to see, everyone, and hear every week after the Michigan football game is Desmond's going to head up our post-game analysis over on the Michigan channel. And going to bring it to you. And, of course, check that live stream for your comments, your questions, your debate topics, anything you want to bring to the table. and engage on Michigan football following the final whistle, when we know people are the most fired up, whether it be a win or sometimes a loss, more times than not this past season, of course, but hopefully back to winning ways here in 2021. So, Desmond, in regards to Michigan football, what's just kind of a quick overview outlook? What are you expecting this season? And of course, we're just about 3 to 4 weeks out and going to find out here in the next few days as they enter fall camp, what some of those key position battles are.
Yeah, the biggest thing I look at is I think of with Jim Harbaugh and Josh Gaddis. Sorry, it's vacation, so
you're
here,
good. You're good. You're just making us envious. Is all you're doing.
No, it's the biggest thing is just going to be Jim Harbaugh and Josh Gaddis really focusing on the quarterback development. So Cade McNamara has been named the starting quarterback, which I think is the right decision. And I think that's going to be the key. We see in college football, the spread offense, your quarterback has to be, performing well. Like we see, with the national championship last year, Mac Jones had a year that I don't think anybody, thought he would have. But, if your quarterback performs well, that's how you're going to get to, to where you want to be as a program for Michigan. So, Indianapolis, beating Ohio State, it's going to have to be Cade McNamara playing his absolute best. You look at the college football playoff overall in general, the best 4 quarterbacks are the 4, are the guys who are leading, those teams in the playoff. There's, a couple exceptions, but overall it's that. So that's going to be the key is Cade McNamara coming out, playing well. I think, Josh Gaddis has to do a better job of putting him in a position to succeed. We hear a lot about speed and space and the RPOs like that. Those things are there and made to make the quarterback's job easier. Get the ball to your athletes in space. You got Ronnie Bell and they got, a young crop of receivers coming in. They have everything that they need to be successful. I think, as a team, you're going to have to, get better and better each week. And ultimately, you want it to culminate, against Ohio State, a couple days after Thanksgiving with a win. We've actually talked about it on the most recent episode of the Dre and Des podcast. But to me, for Michigan fans, if you're going to beat Ohio State, like this is going to be the window. You have a brand new quarterback and he's highly touted, but he's not Justin Fields. So the opportunity is going to be there, but it's going to be Cade McNamara having to perform well.
We're on the line with Desmond Upshaw from the Dre and Des podcast. And again, your favorite audio platform, just jump on there, type it right into the search bar. You're going to lock in on it and get their take on the sports world. What else do you guys talk about on there?
That's a big part of it is football. We're both big football fans. We're also NBA fans. So we talk a little basketball, but football is really our bread and butter. I'm an Alabama fan, but growing up in Michigan, I still live there. I watch them every single week. So I am a little more critical of Jim Harbaugh than probably some of the diehard fans are. But, I also say it too. College football is better when Michigan is better. So I do it. It is like I said, I'm critical of them, but it's for a good reason. I think college football is better when arguably the biggest program, in history is performing well. So, I want them to do, I want them to do well. I want them to do better. So, I'll be as objective as I can. I like to be fair as well. So it's funny. My co-host Dre is a diehard Michigan fan. So we were, we as things have kind of progressed with Jim Harbaugh, especially last year, he's kind of gone off the deep end of like, I'm done, I'm over it. So we kind of talked a little bit about media day, and I actually thought Harbaugh said the right things. I thought the guys that he brought with him, Josh Ross, like they talked about the right things. And, you're not going to win any games at media day. So I'm like, this is about as good as you can get. They talked about, culture and just focusing on today and stacking up, the days to where you make, today is better than yesterday, so on and so forth. And those are the things that you need to at least say, at this point. So to me, I'm like, this is about as big of a win as you could get. Like I said, I hope that they're kind of making that transition and making that change, because I think everybody wants to see Michigan do well outside of probably Ohio State fans. So I think they're in as good of a spot as of right now as you could be. So we'll see how things progress through camp and that first game against Western Michigan and go from there.
And does Dre know that he's welcome? He's welcome on the post-game show.
Yes, he does know that. We've been talking about it behind the scenes. I didn't want to announce anything until you made the announcement, but yeah, he's aware, he's welcome, and you'll be seeing his passion and his fire, for Michigan football on the post game as well.
Well, after having a few phone conversations with you and trading a number of texts, I got to say, Desmond, it's great to see you on video. Great to have you right here where we can see you and see the energy and the excitement for college football coming up here real soon. Now, once again, everybody, this is to announce that Desmond's going to be heading up our Michigan post-game coverage over on the Michigan channel. So please lock it in right there. So following every Michigan game this fall, you're going to see Desmond and possibly some others, but Desmond's going to head up the coverage post-game over there. And Desmond, we stole him from vacation here briefly, and I feel a little bit guilty about this. If I'm reading the reflection in the window above you, you're either at some kind of campsite, or do I see water? What are we doing?
Oh yeah, you see the beach.
Okay, that's what it is. All right.
Yep.
Sweet.
We're in I think it's called Duckweiler Park. Here in Santa Monica, not far from Santa Monica. So I think it's like Long Beach area. I'm not familiar. It's my first trip to California, but here with a family friend. So it's been a great trip. We've been here for about 10 days and head home tomorrow. So things will get a little closer back to normal once we get home. But it's been a great trip.
I've been to California maybe about 10 times, and I would say that hands down, it's got the best weather like through the entire calendar year than anywhere. I've been there in February and it's been 82 degrees and sunny. So it's pretty amazing. So yeah, enjoy and soak it up. And I'm sure the weather's fine in Michigan right now too. So it's not necessarily the worst thing to be back in Michigan in August. But Desmond, it's great to have you. I'm pumped up. I'm excited. And it was great to talk to you, catch up with you tonight. And again, everybody, Michigan postgame coverage with Desmond Upshaw of Dre and Des podcast, and you can catch that on your favorite audio platform. Desmond, you have a great rest of your day. Enjoy your vacation.
Thanks so much, Mark. Appreciate it.
Again, Desmond Upshaw heading up our Michigan football coverage post-game variety, as we will be with you with Maize and Blue following each and every Wolverines game over on the Michigan channel. And I'm excited about that. So basically, the big announcement that I promoted all day was that we are announcing our post-game shows that we will be providing for all of you on the Voice of College Football team channels. So if you want the national coverage, of course, you stay right here with me. And hopefully some of you will stay with me. I don't want everybody flooding off and flying off to the other channels, and I'm going to be here by myself talking college football. But so be it. We're going to have a number of teams. I will announce the teams in just a few minutes. But keep in mind that we're going to add more. I am doing my best to round up more post-game hosts, analysts to handle our team coverage. So the word's out there. And so if you or anybody else is interested, and certainly you're going to have to prove yourself to a certain extent. So it's not just a free deal that you jump on here and start talking. But at the same time, if you love a particular team, you've got a suggestion of anybody else that's out there that I'm unaware of, that is certainly capable of handling a post-game show for a specific team, let me know. Hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. But these are the teams that we have hosts for right now, and we'll have post-game shows for this season. So on our SEC channel, we will be providing an SEC show every Thursday night. Every Saturday night, I believe the time slots are going to be 9 p.m. Eastern time, Thursday and Saturday night. So a big preview show every Thursday night to get you set for the weekend. Then on Saturday night at 9 with a post-game show. And then coming back around for an SEC wrap-up show on Sunday. So on the SEC channel, 3 SEC shows. And then we'll do Florida post-game, Texas A&M post-game as well over on the SEC channel. All right. On the Iowa channel that we just launched last week, we will do Iowa post-game, as well as you just heard from Desmond Upshaw, who's leading our Michigan coverage with Maize and Blue post-game on the Michigan channel. Florida State post-game. We will be telling you more about that coming up soon. But again, the Seminoles launched the season at home on Sunday night against Notre Dame. And then also Miami. We've got a Miami show lined up post-game after the Canes games, beginning with the Alabama showdown. Oklahoma and also Notre Dame, we have coverage of them. I don't want to run down the other teams that I believe we will be covering. I will say Ohio State. Please, anybody out there, Ohio State would be a good one to get. I need a lead or two on Nebraska. Would be phenomenal as well to get Nebraska in the mix. We've got our 22 or 23 team channels, and some of them are a little bit stronger than others, of course. And some of our stronger channels include Miami, Ohio State, Nebraska, in particular, Oklahoma, which we've got covered, but we do not have anyone for Ohio State or Nebraska. I've got some leads for some of the other team channels, but anybody that you've got in mind that has the knowledge, has the communication skills, and as soon as I say that, don't say, Mark, you don't have the communication skills. I own the channel, so I don't need to meet the requirements. Has the knowledge, has the communication skills, and also is going to be reliable and hopefully very passionate and excited about that particular team. So the list will hopefully not stop with those teams, but we are going to provide post-game coverage every week. And one of the things that I wanted to make sure when I talked to these individuals and got them to commit was that they were going to make it for every game. And if they could not make it for every game, that's certainly understandable. We all have lives. We have other things to do, other commitments, but that we wanted 2, 3, 4 people in line so that we've got backups and have a conversation as well. Not necessarily is there going to be one person assigned to each post-game coverage, so that we've got a conversation, because that's one of the main aspects that has made this fun and made this work, has been the conversation that we all have with you. So again, we've got Iowa and Michigan all set in the Big Ten, Miami and Florida State out of the ACC. We've got Texas A&M and Florida in the SEC, along with an SEC wrap-up show on Saturday night after the preview show for the big weekend on Thursday, and then an SEC wrap-up show on Sunday. Oklahoma, Notre Dame, and we are working on others. We've got probably another 5 to 10 that I'm close to wrapping up and completing to be able to launch those as well. But if you know anybody that could handle Nebraska, Ohio State, Clemson would be a priority, as well as Texas would be good. Wouldn't mind launching a USC post game. That would be good as well. Really, everybody in the Power Five, especially. Not that I'm discounting some other options in the group of 5 as well. All right, so that was the big announcement. Our post-game shows this fall at the Voice of College Football. I will be right here every Saturday, taking your calls and conversing with all of you. So that's not going to change. I am here to look at the national scene and take your calls several times per day. And for those of you who have not been with us during college football season, what I typically do is, of course, I'm locked into those noon Eastern time games. And then sometime near the end of those games, around 3:15, I'll jump online, take your calls, respond to your questions and comments, preview the 3:45 games. We'll maybe watch the first drive or two of those 3:45 games, then let you go. We'll come back, prime time, do the same thing leading into the primetime games and wrapping up those 3:30 games. And then a late night call-in show with you as well, right here at the Voice of College Football. All right, let's see who's out there. Oh, my goodness. Lots and lots of people are here to the point where I could not go back to the beginning of the conversation. The beginning of the chat is out of my reach. I can only go back to, this is almost apropos, at 7:09, George made a comment. So that's as far back as I can go. So my apologies if anybody had anything extremely interesting to say or ask before 7:09. But we've got George here. And we've got past, and there's a whole lot of other letters and numbers after that. Hi, good to see you. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. I don't believe I've seen your handle before, so we would love to know who you root for, how long you've been watching. Hey, Chuck, good to see you. Also heard on another talk show about Clemson and Florida State talking to the SEC. We talked about that earlier on the live stream that we did earlier today when the Quinn Ewers story broke. Clemson and Florida State talking to the SEC. So once that would happen, then you've got a situation where the Big Ten would have to act. And of course, the Pac-12 would, you would think, I would hope that they would be pushed at that point to act themselves, but they've got less draw, less leverage to act. And then the Big Ten, if Clemson and Florida State sign with the SEC, then the Big Ten has to act. The Pac-12 has to survive. And those two need to look at each other and say, hey, this is time. Boom, together. And then at that point, you're looking at 18 teams in the SEC. If they only take Clemson and Florida State, that's 18 in the SEC. And you've got a situation where the Pac-12 and the Big Ten could play it basically two different ways. They could play it a dozen different ways, but basically two different ways where either they look at the Pac-12 as an equal partner, but then you're looking at 26 schools trying to form a conference. Or the Big Ten looks at the Pac-12 as a place where they could poach the best programs, USC, UCLA, Washington, Oregon, and then look at the ACC and say, okay, well, look at all these schools that have been hung out to dry, similar to Oklahoma and Texas leaving the Big 12. Well, they're going to be feeling that same resentment, bitterness, ire against the ACC. So maybe they go after some combination of North Carolina, Georgia Tech, the schools that qualify academically, Virginia, and the Big Ten pieces something together between Big 12, Pac-12, and ACC eligible schools. And you've heard me say it ever since Oklahoma and Texas to the SEC broke. I would go after UCF. If I was the ACC, I'd go after UCF. And if I was the Big Ten at this point, if that news is true, if that's valid and legitimate and about to go through, if I'm the Big Ten, I'm also seriously considering going to Florida for the alumni base, the current enrollment, the seriousness of the football product, and the Orlando celebrity entertainment base, and the recruiting in Florida. UCF, UCF, UCF. Ang 3 lovers. Ang 3 lovers. Sometimes you got to put these together, and I'm not really good at that. Pro Player 2000. Thank you so much for the super chat contribution. Always appreciate that. It is technically a super sticker. So we'll thank you for that. Okay. All right. What do we got from past three here? A lot of highs. Michigan, Ohio State fan. Okay. Tennille's looking for a mod, probably because of the past three. Don't see any issues yet. Pro Player 2000. I love watching Michigan home games on television. That crowd is inspirational. That is one thing I have not heard described about a Michigan football crowd. Inspirational. I always thought that Michigan crowds had the reputation of sitting on their hands, being the quietest 112,000 people imaginable to be anywhere. Yes, let's get along, folks. Get along. It's only college football. It's not the end of the world. It's nothing important. Let's have fun. Get along. Nate the Great. Nate the Great, you've got to be happy, Nate the Great, if you're out there. We've got Michigan post-game coverage for you, specifically Michigan. Oregon crushed Michigan in 2007. That crowd was silent and pissed. Sam, yes. 39-7 comes to mind. Pro Player 2000. Yes, Matt Campbell. Michigan fans would love to see Matt Campbell, but let's play out 2021. Yes, Captain Trips, I agree. Nathan Great is basically our favorite Michigan fan. The favored Michigan fan of the throngs, of the many out there, would be Nate the Great. Jimmy, we talked about this during our Quinn Ewers live stream earlier today. I am guessing that if Ohio State signs a quarterback for 2022, they will probably get 2 transfers out of those 4 in the quarterback room now. They may only have 1 leave if they do not sign a quarterback for 2022. So Ryan Day knows his business. Doesn't need to listen to me. But I would not stretch or reach for a quarterback in the 22 class. If they have somebody that they are just in love with beyond Quinn Ewers in the 22 class, then they should not be in any way reluctant based on having these 4 young quarterbacks. They have 4 quarterbacks who are either true freshmen or redshirt freshmen. That's crazy. Jeremy, it's got to be the most overstated phrase in college football regarding any particular fan base when they say it's better, college football is better when so-and-so is winning. I know Desmond said it about Michigan. He's in Michigan, and his podcast co-host, Dre, is a enormous Michigan fan. So, of course, he's going to say it, and people say it all the time. So I would never put down Desmond for saying it, but it is a bit cliche that college football is better when somebody's winning. Well, for Jeremy, college football for him's better when Michigan's losing. There it is. Derwake is letting us know that Clemson and Florida State are reaching out to the SEC. You gotta wonder you got to wonder if this is all being coordinated or this is just slapped together, meaning Oklahoma and Texas acted on their own, reached out to the SEC, have been talking to the SEC for 6 months, that maybe Clemson and Florida State knew about this earlier, and this was supposed to be pieced together as opposed to all of it dropping on our heads at one time. Maybe. Maybe it's all coordinated ahead of time. Clemson has denied the rumor. Now, that's interesting, Sam, if you're being accurate with your phrasing there, because that is something that Texas and Oklahoma did not do, and that's deny the rumor. They said, we have no comment at this time. They did not deny it. But if Clemson is denying that rumor, so again, our big announcement tonight is that we have post-game live shows that are launching week 1 for these teams: Iowa, Michigan, Miami, Florida State, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Florida. And an SEC show on Thursday nights, Saturday nights, and Sunday afternoons as well. We had a other super chat contribution coming in, but I cannot go grab it. It's red. I know it's red because I can see it up there at the top. So we said thank you to Pro Player 2000 for the super sticker. Then we also have one coming in from Falconer X. Of course, we've got one coming in from Falconer X. Falconer X, you're amazing. Thank you so much for the super sticker. Appreciate that. I cannot post it to the screen, unfortunately, because it hit at 7:08, not 7:09. All right. Let's get to it. We've got predictions coming out. We've released Virginia, Oregon, TCU, Michigan State, UCLA, Pitt, and South Carolina in the morning. And I've got to cut some more tonight. Brandon, thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate that so much, Brandon. Thanks for keeping us going. I think that most of you provide the super chat out of appreciation, and I thank you so much. I believe that some of you also understand the vision of what we're doing here. The aim is the best discussion, debate, and analysis of college football. Do we hit it every day? Nope. But that's the mission. Brandon says, if this move was to happen, I sure hope they would keep the same proposed 12-team playoff format, because these teams joining the SEC are getting to look stupid. Yeah. So, Brandon, on one hand, if we keep a 14 playoff, these teams are going to have no hope of making a playoff. That's number one. I believe your point, but there will be a 12-team playoff. They did not get that deep into the conversation if they weren't confident that at some point that 12-team playoff would be unveiled to everyone and be implemented. They wouldn't have gotten that far into the process and unveiled all of that and proposed it publicly for all of us to see if they weren't confident that there's going to be a 12-team playoff. There must be an agreement that the model is in place, the structure is in place, and they just have to work out the details to the 12-team playoff. Appreciate everybody being here. Sue says, word is the SEC said no thanks to Clemson and Florida State. Now Clemson is denying it ever happened, but would they say if they just got shut down? Don't know who to believe at this point. Okay. Trying to think of the SEC's thought process here. So they get approached by Oklahoma and Texas. They talk for 6 months. They take them on. They get approached by Clemson and Florida State. Maybe the SEC is thinking legitimately that they want a 16-team conference, that there will eventually be 4 16 team conferences, and they are comfortable with adding Texas and Oklahoma. I can't necessarily get into the finances off the top of my head, knowing how that would shake out. We know what they bring on the football field. We know that right now Clemson is playing at a higher level than any of those four, but Oklahoma's right there. And may this season catch or surpass what Clemson has produced in the last 5 to 6 years. So basically it's Clemson 1, Oklahoma 1A. Then it's, my goodness, Texas, between Texas and Florida State. Florida State has been better more recently, having a top 10 team in 2014, 15, and 16 after winning a BCS championship in 2013. And of course, for Texas, they've been pretty marginal since 2009. Had the one decent season in 18 when they won the Sugar Bowl. So those two programs have been floundering, although Texas has a lot more money. Bigger brand, more money, more facilities, just flat out more money than Florida State. Florida State, as I understand it, I don't have the numbers to back me up, but I've seen enough articles written about it and discussion about it, is one of the poorer big-time programs. One of the ones that don't necessarily just have the incredibly deep pockets that just never end. This is truly going to be fascinating, even if this expansion stops right now, to watch Oklahoma and Texas move into the conference. Now, we had this in 2012, of course, but Texas A&M and Missouri were basically churning out 7-5, 8-4 seasons. Texas is supposed to be much better than that. They're supposed to be. They haven't been since 2009, of course. And Oklahoma is humming at a torrid pace right now. After the big three, they have the best record in college football during the playoff era. They have pieced together the best quarterback run of any team in the country. They have a head coach who is putting together a resume based on offensive production and based on winning Big 12 championships that is second only to, or third to, Saban and Sweeney. And right now, because of the defensive improvements that I believe are legit, hang on, they're legit to a certain extent. Are they legit to a playoff standard? I don't know. So Oklahoma's defensive performances 3 years ago and going further back than that were like bottom 40 in the nation, bad. Like 80th, 90th in the nation, bad. Awful, giving up 35, 40, 45 points to Big 12 teams on a regular basis. So they have gone from that to being arguably the best defense in the Big 12 and holding teams to reasonable point totals. Look at the games last year. Look at the games, for the most part, in 2019 as well. Okay. But Clemson had a vintage Clemson defense led by that historic defensive front in 2018, and that defense was good enough to hold Ian Book and Notre Dame to 3 points. I know we're not talking about a juggernaut of an offense, but still a playoff team to 3 points. And then Alabama with Tua and Devontae Smith and that bunch, Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs and Najee Harris and all those guys, to 16 points. No points in the second half. Now, if you look at Clemson the last 2 years, statistically, they're just as good in dominating the ACC, but have clearly shown that they are not a great defense when they have been matched up against LSU and Ohio State. So is Oklahoma that defense? Are they improved enough to hold the marginal teams, even good teams, down, but not yet ready to control? Now, you're not going to stop, but control playoff type teams. Hold them to 28 points. Not get ripped for 45 and 48 points and 54 points to Georgia in the Rose Bowl. And a zillion points to Alabama in the first half before Alabama cruised to a 45-34 win. 7 touchdowns given up to LSU in the first half. Everybody wants to see Oklahoma play at least one SEC team in the playoffs this year. Everybody wants to see that, because coming out of that game, there's going to be talk of either Oklahoma is ready for the SEC because they're going to be playing the best team in the SEC, or the second best if the conference gets in 2. And they're either going to show that they are ready to jump into the SEC, at least based on that one game performance, which I'm going to be talking everyone off the cliff, off the edge. Whether it goes well or doesn't go well, I'm going to be talking to the Oklahoma fans and reeling them back. If they beat Georgia or Alabama in the playoffs, I'm going to be reeling them back to say, whoa, that was one game. Nice job. That's impressive. Beat your chest. I understand. You're happy. You're pumped. You're excited. But whoa, hang on. That doesn't mean you're going to go into the SEC and dominate. And then if Oklahoma suffers a typical 3 or 4 touchdown loss in the playoffs to an SEC team, I'm going to be saying, yeah, that doesn't look good. But it is one game, but it doesn't look good. But they at least now have a barometer still to go by to know what they need to do to be ready to play in the SEC at the top. Check out the video I posted where I matched up the Oklahoma program against the SEC over the past 10 years. And then I tried to project what that could look like going forward. And I did the same thing with Texas. All right. H-Man says, love how people react to reports without actually reading into them. Clemson has said they have had no talks with the SEC and that the original ESPN report was completely false. And that's curious, H-Man, because we have seen people and organizations deny through the years. I would hope at this stage that organizations and schools would be too smart to do that, because the truth most likely is going to be uncovered at some point. So if Clemson did talk to the SEC, that is going to come to light at some point. So I would hope that if they're denying that they talked to the SEC, that's the truth, because they're going to look horrible. They're going to look like morons if that comes to light, which it most likely will, whether it be now or a year from now. Wake wanted to know how the Texas Tech transfer quarterback Alan Bowman was doing in Michigan. Well, it was curious that at Big Ten Media Days, Jim Harbaugh did not mention Bowman. He even mentioned his 4th string quarterback and how well he was playing. He's got a high ceiling, just as bones of glass. He has been hurt. Yes, Woke. My apologies. I guess it's Wake. Alan Bowman, 33 touchdowns, 17 picks, 67% completion percentage at Texas Tech. So basically, when Alan Bowman took the field at Texas Tech against most of the Big 12, he was playing for an undermanned team, somewhat undermanned, not grossly undermanned, but he was typically playing against the better team. I will say also that Alan Bowman, his statistics weigh heavily and were built heavily during weak non-conference games. I'm not going to pretend to say that I watched him play that much. I don't see Texas Tech play that much. They usually catch my eye in a game like against Texas last year when they were up by 17 points in the 4th quarter. And then I was like, oh, I got to see them pull off this upset. And then Texas comes back and beats them. So Texas Tech, I don't know how much Alan Bowman I've seen, because even when I watched Texas Tech play in the last few years with Alan Bowman, I wasn't necessarily scouting Alan Bowman thinking he's going to be a Michigan quarterback. Center point. How realistic is it that the Pac-12 merges with the Big Ten? I think it becomes more realistic when we learn of possible SEC continued expansion. That's what makes it even more feasible. Texas and Oklahoma were not happy in the Big 12 for a number of reasons. They looked for that opportunity to approach the SEC and then, of course, left. The Big Ten does not look at the Pac-12 like somebody that they can just take teams from. I would see that as a last resort. There are rumors out there that the Big Ten would just grab USC and UCLA and or Oregon and Washington. I just don't see. The Big Ten has not operated like that. They see the Pac-12 as a partner. They've been a partner in scheduling with the Rose Bowl, academically. They have taken typically, and look at the pandemic last year and the cooperation and the similar approach that the Big Ten, for better or worse, took with the Pac-12. So do they merge? If the SEC and the ACC are going to merge, then it would only make sense that the Big Ten and the Pac-12 would merge, and then these other teams would scatter to either the group of five, the American Conference, or they would latch on to the SEC. And whatever the conference would be called, that would be a power struggle in and of itself. When two conferences merge, what do they call the new conference? Are we no longer going to have a Big Ten or Pac-12 or an SEC or an ACC? You would think that the SEC would take the lead and be the conference name going forward. And you would think that the Big Ten would be the conference name going forward, just because they're the power conferences that can rule over the other one and play big brother. And even though it's a partnership, it's the one controlling the moves. Bama loves road games. Now, this would have to be proven to me, since Bama, of course, has to play its fair share of SEC road games like everybody else in the conference, but Bama has not chosen to play a game on the road against a Power 5 opponent since Penn State in 2010. I think those games were played in 2010 and 2011. So Alabama doesn't necessarily love going on the road. Now, I know that in the future, they have finally scheduled some non-conference road games, but everything since 2011 has been at home or a neutral site. So I'm failing to, maybe they've got a great record on the road. Well, Alabama's got a great record everywhere, but they don't like going on the road. They don't do it. Did ESPN break up the Big East? They certainly produced an interesting documentary. Did ESPN? One of their 30 for 30s was on the demise of the Big East, and it's pretty insightful. So we launched this live stream tonight, letting you know that we had a big announcement concerning our post-game coverage here at the Voice of College Football. And we showed you a graphic with all the teams that we are going to be covering with post-game analysis and a post-game show following each game. That included Miami and Florida State in the ACC, Notre Dame and Oklahoma. That included an SEC show, and also Texas A&M and Florida. And out of the Big Ten, that's Michigan. And you heard from Desmond Upshaw, who's going to head up our Michigan coverage. And for the Iowa Hawkeyes, we've got Corey Brad on the line. And Corey joins us from the from the Hawkeye. Oh my goodness!
Let's try it again, Mark.
Hawkeye of the Storm. Well, we're live, Corey. I just blew it for everyone to see.
Sorry, at least you can hear me this time. I think last time we were on for our live show, nobody could hear us, or you
Well,
couldn't hear me and they couldn't hear me.
it
And
was a bit of a mess, but I was just a bit of a mess, and it would have been better had nobody been able to hear me 10 seconds ago, because if I don't have the name written in front of me, I am bound to blow it each and every time. From the
it's all right.
Hawkeye of the Storm, we've got Corey Brada here.
Yep, from the Hawkeye of the Storm on Spotify, on YouTube, of course. We are, again, I heard your interview with the new Michigan post-game host, and same with him. I mean, we're everywhere where you listen to a podcast. So, again, Apple Music, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, all that good stuff. So, yeah, we're excited for this Iowa post-game show, Mark. And I was able to, I know you and I have had discussions, and I think I'll go ahead and mention this now for anybody that is an Iowa fan or interested in Hawkeye football. We have the privilege this fall of being able to have one of the greatest, I want to say that because he was part of one of the greatest coaching staffs in college football history. Don Patterson was an assistant under Hayden Fry. Of course, most people know the household names that coached under Fry, Kirk Ferentz being one, of course. You think about the Stoops brothers, certainly Bill Snyder, Barry Alvarez. You can go on and on and on with the coaching tree there under Hayden. But Don Patterson was a big part of Hayden's success. In fact, he was with him for 20 years, coached a year with him at North Texas. Most recently, Don, he is retired now, and Don was actually, his last position was as an assistant head coach at UConn. He was head coach at Western Illinois previously. Before that, he dealt with some medical issues related to cancer. But Don's just a great guy. Anybody who's here in the state of Iowa may have heard him on the radio. He does some work for some local Iowa City station on Mondays, breaking down the games. But we're going to get him on for many of the post-game shows this fall for Iowa. So I'm super pumped. He is an analytical genius. He is a numbers geek, if you will. And he loves his Iowa football, but he also knows his Iowa football. In fact, he does analytics currently for Kirk Ferentz. So he kind of has a bit of an inside look at Iowa. And super pumped to break down the Hawkeyes after each game this fall, Mark.
I hope that the 250 or so people that we've got on the line right now just were able to grasp, all of you, able to grasp what Corey just outlined right there in the analysis that's going to be at your disposal during the Iowa post-game shows. That is phenomenal. I will, if I can't catch it live, I'm going to be glued to each one of those, because when it comes to listening to people that are smarter than me, which is not difficult for me to find, but when I can find somebody that's smarter than me that can break down the analytics and the numbers, and it's one thing to know numbers, memorize numbers, be fascinated with numbers, but to give them context and to build the storyline with the numbers and really understand them is a whole other level. And that's just to get that kind of draw from the Iowa program and from Iowa football history, and then bring that to the present for this post-game show. Corey, I cannot thank you enough for making that happen.
Well, and if anybody doesn't know what I mean when I say analytics as it relates to sports, I don't want to assume everybody knows what that means. One of Don's favorite movies, in fact, we had discussion about this the other day, is the movie Moneyball with Brad Pitt. If anybody hasn't seen that, I know this is a college football show, but that show is about baseball, of course, and the Oakland A's. If you haven't seen that show or that movie, watch that movie. And that's an inside scoop of what Don's going to provide as it relates to Big Ten football. He's just a genius. I think he's kind of the unsung hero of the work that goes into prepping for each Big Ten game. He's doing, literally hundreds of hours of work on each opponent for Iowa this fall. So he gives some good insight as far as what to look for moving forward. So, of course, we'll talk about that towards the end of our post-game shows. We'll kind of preview the next week with Don. And so we hope to have Don on for one of our podcasts. Of course, we'll, if we can make that happen this month prior to the post-game coverage in September when the games start, we'll announce that through our channel from the Hawkeye of the Storm. And I'm sure we'll throw a segment up on the Iowa Voice of College Football channel as well. So, super excited for Don. And, couldn't be more grateful for him. He's a busy guy. He does some announcing work for the UNI Panthers, Northern Iowa, an FCS team here, very successful FCS team here in the state of Iowa. So he's a busy guy already, but he was gracious enough, and he loves football. Again, he's doing this because he loves Iowa football. He spent a lot of his time, if anybody really wants to delve into Don Patterson's career, he spent a lot of time coaching quarterbacks. So I think his insight into Spencer Petras this year will be phenomenal. I don't, he's biased. There's no question about that, as am I think. But at the same time, I think he takes a very unbiased look as best you can. And at the quarterback position, of course, all eyes are going to be on Petras this year. As we've talked, you and I, Mark, on your show, his first road game will be at Iowa State week 2. So it's the season for Iowa. The schedule launches from the outset with Indiana at home and then Iowa State week 2. So Don is going to provide great insight. I have no doubt about it.
So Don loves Iowa football. For anybody out there that's listening right now that loves Iowa football, please head on over to our Iowa football channel, Voice of College Football Iowa. Corey has provided us with a ton of great content there, whether it's with me or a slice of his podcast that you can find here again on YouTube or on your favorite audio platform, but you can find a slice here on the Iowa football channel. So if you could please subscribe right there. So I know that many of you will subscribe because you love Hawkeye football, but also many of you are just so amazing in your support for what we do here, is that you will just head on over there and just subscribe to help us with the numbers that we need to push this to a great place. And then I will let you know that if once we get past the 1,000 mark, then if truth be known, if you want to unsubscribe at that point, then we're in a safe place. But please help us bolster the Iowa channel out of the gate. And certainly for you Big Ten fans and Iowa football fans, head on over there and you will love the content. And it's been tremendous to have Corey here for a number of appearances here at the Voice of College Football. But every Iowa football game following the final gun, you will get the take from Corey, and most of the time from Don, and they will interact with you Iowa fans and whomever else wants to jump in, college football fans, following the Iowa football season of 12 games. But those 2 right out of the gate, again, Corey, as you just outlined, is a pretty rough stretch and going to tell us a whole lot about this team, and they could really position themselves for big things if they are able to come away with 2 wins.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would encourage anybody who is even slightly interested in Iowa or Big Ten football to subscribe now, because like you said, those first 2 games are going to, in fact, that kind of is a good way to promote some of the segments that we've released from the Hawkeye of the Storms podcast that we've released in segments over on your channel, Iowa at the Voice of College Football. We kind of ranked each game by importance, and I know that, when you look at those first 2 games, Iowa State is a non-conference game. It's a game where I actually ranked really low on my totem pole of importance, simply because I don't know what it does for Iowa. Obviously, it's a quality win, but you lose the game, it's not really going to hurt you, and it's not going to affect you in the Big Ten. Whereas Indiana, Big Ten game right out of the gate, we know what Petras struggled with last year out of the gate against Purdue and Northwestern. So, yeah, I mean, even though the Iowa State game doesn't affect Iowa in the standings, you're 2-0. I would think this channel will blow up if Iowa ends up 2-0, Mark. So let's root for 2-0. But it certainly is going to be a different look. We're not used to that in Hawkeye Nation. Got it last year because of COVID and the schedule changes. But it's going to be right out of the gate. Iowa's going to have a couple really tough tests.
I don't have Indiana and Iowa State channels, so we will be rooting for the Hawkeyes to win for the channel.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, Mark. I don't mean to cut you off, but and I know we've got a Michigan channel, but we're going to be providing post-game coverage for every Iowa game. So even if you are a fan of Maryland or Penn State or Nebraska, I know you're working on a Nebraska team or a post-game guy. any of the other Big Ten teams, or if you're a Colorado State, Iowa State, I think Kent State's on the schedule. I mean, we'll talk. We'll gladly take your calls, take your chats. So yeah, lots of incentive, and as you have made it clear, it's free. It's the and I know Iowa fans. Here's the thing, Mark. Growing up in this state, I loved listening to Sound Off, and Jim Zabel was sort of before my era. I don't really remember a whole lot of Zabel, but just Sound Off in this state through WHO 1040 down in Des Moines. And it's still going strong. And I mean, we're talking, my wife would get irritated with me in the evenings because I'd have that going until 1 a.m. I mean, they'd taking calls, and they still do. They take calls past midnight after their, an evening game. And so I know Iowa fans are passionate about call-in shows and Hawk Talk, so to speak. Hopefully that's not a patented phrase. But so I think a lot of Iowa fans will love what we're going to bring this fall, no question.
Jimmy, you're right. The Hawkeye dude does know his stuff.
Thanks, Jimmy. Appreciate that. I try my best, but I tell you again, I look forward to this fall. Don Patterson's going to blow me away, but that's okay because it's just going to enhance the channel.
Yeah, so I'm so excited about this, and regardless of what happens the first 2 weeks of the season, and I know that that Indiana game is, you can't lose more than 2 games, most likely, and make it to a Big Ten championship game. And one may be it, something in that range. And so obviously that's going to be a huge game in particular. And then the in-state rivalry game. But I believe in this football team. I think it's a good team. Even if they start out 0-2, I still think that they're a top 15 to 20 team in the nation.
Yeah, and Mark, I know you haven't gotten into predictions, I don't think, through your channel yet. But as far as Indiana is concerned, at least for my predictions, and I haven't really delved into the Big Ten yet for this year, but I don't know who I rank ahead of Indiana in the East that's on Iowa's schedule. They don't get Ohio State. Maybe Penn State. I think the verdict's still out on Penn State. They got a lot to prove after last year's struggles, especially early. So yeah, you're absolutely right. This is a game where theoretically you could drop this game and then run the table in the Big Ten. But yeah, you hate to lose. It is an Eastern Division game, so it doesn't hurt you as not the double whammy you get if you lose a game in the West. So I'm glad it's not a West game early. And I've noticed the Big Ten. I don't know if that's common throughout the Big Ten, but they typically, that week 1 game, it seems to be, I know Ohio State got Indiana a couple of years ago, but it seems to be, at least for Iowa, when they've played an East opponent week 1, it's been a crossover game. I think they played Rutgers a couple of years back. So yeah, Iowa's got a tough one to start out with, but boy, you win that one, a lot of momentum going forward.
Yeah, we've got Ohio State, Minnesota in week 1. We've got Penn State and Wisconsin, which is going to be fascinating. Illinois and Nebraska do get together. There was a bit of a scheduling situation there since they were supposed to originally have played that in Ireland,
right,
in week 0.
Right. Yeah, so it seems like the Big Ten's trying to schedule the crossover games early. I know Iowa gets Penn State early this year as well. And of course leave the Western Division or the in interdivision opponents for the rest of the season, which I like. I think it retains the importance of the season, even for teams that aren't in college football playoff contention. It retains that throughout the rest of the season. I am a big advocate for, not to get on a different subject, I'd be big advocate for keeping the Wisconsin game late in the season. I know people love the Black Friday game with Nebraska, but I'd love a Black Friday game with Wisconsin, just given the competitiveness in that rivalry as compared to the Nebraska rivalry. But I guess that's and yes, I saw that chat. Iowa did lose to North Dakota State a few years ago. I don't know what that has to do with this year, but that is a fact. They did lose to North Dakota State in 2016. That's correct. CJ Beathard was knocked out of that game briefly. That was a game that will forever haunt Iowa fans of the century, because 2016 was a much hyped season, and that was the loss that kind of derailed the whole game, the whole season. I think that year was also the year Iowa just destroyed it. Iowa State 42-7, something like that. And so Iowa fans were feeling good until the Bison of Fargo came to town.
Well, they've done that to a few decent Power 5 programs. Kansas State comes to mind as well, and I believe Minnesota at some point in the last decade.
Yeah, Kansas State for sure. I was thinking Iowa State played them at some point. I don't know, but yeah, North Dakota State. Let's launch a North Dakota State channel, Mark. I think that's a channel with a lot of passionate fans.
I think
I
I've
would
got my
love it.
hands full with channels right now.
Yeah.
We've had a few people come forward with their proposals for post-game shows for teams that we don't have channels, a few other ones, and so I'm weighing the opportunity there. So yeah.
No, it's going to be an excellent chance for Iowa, I think, this year in the West. Again, I know we haven't made any predictions. I think Iowa is right there with. We've said that past years. Iowa fans have said that for seems like every year for like the past decade, maybe minus 2012. And even that year, I think there was more hype early on, and then of course it completely derailed. But Iowa is right there with Wisconsin, I think, from a talent standpoint, from momentum standpoint, having won their last 6 games last year. They finally got spring, which is important at Iowa. I'm sure it's important in Madison as well. But no, this is a real year where Iowa could end up in Indianapolis. I truly believe that. And a lot's riding on it because they're going to lose a lot next year. I mean, maybe the best interior lineman in the country, and Tyler Linderbaum, he'll be gone. I wouldn't be surprised to see Tyler Goodson gone. Sam Laporta at tight end, depending on what year he has, he could very well be gone. So a lot riding on this season.
And actually, my predictions are right there. So those are my predictions right there. So nobody screenshot that because they're coming out as we speak. South Carolina in the morning. So the team by team, they're being released. Now, Working Man here believes that Iowa's known for playing tough games and coming up on the short end.
You're preaching to the choir, Working Man. That's an absolutely accurate statement, and I'm glad. I'm assuming Working Man is not an Iowa fan. I'm kind of take pleasure in hearing that from someone on the outside, because you sometimes wonder. It feels like, as an Iowa guy, an Iowa fan, that's what I am. That for years, Iowa has dealt with last-second losses in big games, time after time after time, and you sometimes wonder, is this just me? Is every fan base deal with this? And I'm just kind of in my own bubble. But no, I'm glad to hear that from someone else. Iowa does. I mean, look at 2015, the Big Ten championship game, LJ Scott with the last-second touchdown there. 2017 against Penn State at home, last-second touchdown, Juwan Johnson. There have been a lot of unfortunate things that have happened in close calls. I think of 2009. I mean, Iowa was well on its way to, I don't know about BCS national title game, but certainly a Big Ten championship. Would they have beaten Ohio State with Stanzi at quarterback had he not gotten hurt against Northwestern? And who knows? But just unfortunate things that have happened. And then CJ Beathard was playing. People don't remember, but Beathard was playing banged up a lot of 2015. And despite that, they go 12-0 and lose on that last-second touchdown by LJ Scott. So yeah, at some point you think the tide has to turn. And I think one thing that Iowa fans are taking pleasure in this, at least the last 5 years, there seems to be more innovation with guys like Brian Ferentz now, who I know he's a sort of a controversial subject at Iowa, but with Brian Ferentz's play calling, LeVar Woods as special teams coordinator, he's thrown in some trick plays that Kirk has been okay with. So I think that's kind of offset some of the pains from last-second losses that Iowa fans are used to being on the losing end of.
We've got Corey Bretta on the line from the Hawkeye of the Storm. That's his podcast that you can catch the audio platform for that on your favorite audio service, or the video version right here on YouTube. And Corey's going to head up our post-game coverage here at the Voice of College Football on our Iowa channel, and most of those efforts will also be simulcast right here on the main channel at the Voice of College Football. Considering the circumstances across college football, Corey, for the past 10 days with Texas and Oklahoma proclaiming for the SEC, and there was rumors today floating around about Clemson and Florida State talking to the SEC. There's much talk in Big Ten camps about what is the Big Ten going to do to counter. Is that simply going to be looking at the remaining schools in the Big 12 and pulling some of them in, or doing something massive with the Pac-12, more likely than the ACC? So with Iowa State possibly hanging out there as a remaining Big 12 member and the best football playing school currently in the 8 remaining schools, there's been discussion about how Iowa would receive Iowa State into the Big Ten. Have you had those conversations?
It's an interesting question. In fact, that's sort of a preview of our podcast that we'll be releasing here in the next 24 hours. I think it's time to embrace Iowa State in the Big Ten. And I know a lot of Iowa fans have been kind of bashing the idea. They don't bring anything, blah, 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 blah. Well, this is a team. First of all, I get the argument against TV, regions, whatnot. It doesn't, somebody joked here locally, you add the Ogden, Boone, and Ames TV markets. And if you don't know where Ogden and Boone are, get out your atlas. But no, TV market, I don't think you have better insight on this than I do, Mark. I don't think TV markets mean near what they meant, back when Maryland and Rutgers were added to the Big Ten. I think if the Big Ten had to do it over, they'd get rid of Maryland and Rutgers. Although Maryland has been respectable in basketball and Rutgers is on the upswing in hoops as well. But I think it's time to embrace Iowa State simply for the fact of what they're establishing right now with Matt Campbell. And here's a guy who I think it's clear he had chances to go to. There's some mixed reports about whether he got offered by the Detroit Lions. There were teams that I think would have hired him in a heartbeat as their head coach in the NFL, and he's stuck here. And, I see both sides of it. Iowa fans kind of thinking that Iowa State fans are they're still sort of in the honeymoon phase with him and kind of blowing it out of proportion. But I do think there is something to be said about his loyalty to Iowa State. How far that stretches, I have no idea. One of the jobs that I have said since he's been here that I think Iowa State fans should be worried about would be Ohio State. But given the success Ryan Day has had, I don't see any way. I mean, again, unless Ryan Day were to leave for the NFL, and I don't know who he would leave Ohio State for as far as a pro job. I think Matt Campbell's staying in Iowa State, and as long as he's there, he's established a culture of consistency. Now, are they going to be a college football playoff contending team every year? Probably not. And so do I think it turns the tide and evens the scales with the SEC if they add Clemson, Florida State? Absolutely not. But let's remember, Florida State hasn't been a power over the past 4 or 5 years. Certainly Clemson and Oklahoma tipped the scales, but Texas hasn't been a power. So I think, it's one of those things where I think Iowa fans, they fit the demographic from a education standpoint, and certainly from a regional standpoint. I don't know about Kansas. That's another one that's been tossed around. Certainly basketball would affect things, but we're talking football. I think it's time to embrace Iowa State. And beyond that, do you get into the Pac-12? I heard you earlier talking about, basically a mega conference. I just don't know what that would look like. I mean, how do you determine a conference champion when, you're not even going to be able to play everybody in your division? And, obviously, I'm assuming you're playing 3 divisions then to be able to play everybody. And then how do you have a championship game? Do you have a play-in or a playoff, so to speak? I don't know how that would look. But as far as Iowa State is concerned, I would welcome them with open arms to the Big Ten as of today.
I saw somebody's configuration of a 30-team ACC/SEC, because if you combine the 16 and the 14, you got 30, and they put it into 5 pods with 6 teams in each pod, or maybe it was 5 and 6 pods, and then you play everyone in your pod. And then they were increasing the conference schedule to 10 games with only 2 non-conference games, and you can come up with some kind of semblance, but it's still just too massive for me to either. I think we've long since passed the threshold of what I would like to see a conference look like that's manageable.
Well, and one other thing too to add to that discussion about Iowa State, and again, I don't know what things would look like if Iowa State were to come and they add half of the Pac-12 or even 4 or 5 teams in the Pac-12. But if Big Ten were to retain the 9 conference game schedule and not expand to 10, Iowa fans will get their wish of being able to play another non-conference power other than Iowa State, because it is not happening. As long as you're playing 9 conference games, this rivalry is not going anywhere. But if you are able to add them to the Big Ten, then all of a sudden you can make this a conference game. I don't see a scenario where they would play this game as a non-conference game to where it wouldn't count for the conference schedule. So, I don't know. Again, the possibilities would be endless. But even before the Big Ten expanded to 9 conference games and Iowa was playing Pitt and Arizona, people weren't happy. They wanted another power. So the only way that I could see that happening is adding Iowa State to the Big Ten. So if you're an advocate for that, Colin Cowherd, if you're listening, that's how you make Iowa's schedule stronger, is getting Iowa State as a conference game and then throwing in a UCLA or even an ACC like a Clemson or Florida State. I don't know if Iowa could pull that off as far as scheduling, but it's actually becomes a discussion.
Corey, you've referenced just another way and another reason for us to root for Iowa football this year would be to get Colin Cowherd in the discussion and get him a bit riled up, because as long as you're going 8-4, you don't hear from him. But when you start to challenge for something on a national scale, then he gets uptight about that.
Well, if I recall, he did withdraw his statement that Iowa was the fake ID of college football. He withdrew that after Iowa's drumming of Ohio State in 2017. So it's been pretty quiet from Colin since then. I don't think Iowa fans are too concerned with what Colin Cowherd, whatever his name is, has to say about the Hawkeyes. I think 2015 kind of left people sulking.
Well, we do care and do embrace and cherish the words from Corey Bratta, and you can catch him again on his podcast, whether it be the audio version on your favorite audio platform or right here on YouTube from the Hawkeye of the Storm. And most notably today, we're making the big announcement that you can catch Corey on the Iowa postgame show that we're going to be providing on the Iowa channel, and most of the time right here, the Voice of College Football on the main channel. And that's going to be after every Hawkeyes contest, and the first 2 out of the gate are huge. So meanwhile, step on over to the Iowa channel, catch some of Corey's work and our conversations as well, and subscribe right there at the Voice of College Football Iowa. Corey, we appreciate you stopping by as always and hope to see you soon.
Appreciate it, Mark. And I embrace what you just said. I would love subscribers over it from the Hawkeye of the Storm, but if you don't want to clutter up your subscriber list, just go over to Iowa at the Voice of College Football so we can have a lot of people involved this fall with post game conversation. And I look forward to it. We're about a month away, Mark.
Thanks, Corey. Have a good night.
Thank you.
We'll see you. Corey Bratta, you see his banner down here at the bottom of the screen one more time from the Hawkeye of the Storm. You can catch that right here on YouTube. Also, subscribe to our Voice of College Football platform right here on YouTube, the Voice of College Football Iowa. Corey's going to be with you along with Don Patterson, and you heard his credentials. They are first rate for every Iowa post game. All right. We also, many of you don't know, have an SEC channel where we have 12 or 13,000 subscribers at this point, something in that range. And we provide SEC content every day over there. And we are happy to announce that we've got post-game coverage for the entire conference provided by Kenneth Pruitt. And you can catch Kenneth at crunchtimeadvantage.com. And we're going to find out more about what he's involved with. And also, again, our SEC show that's going to be provided by and launched and hosted by Kenneth each and every weekend. Kenneth, how you doing tonight?
Mark, good to be with you. How you doing this evening?
I am doing well. It's great to have you. Great to see you. We've had many conversations over the phone. This is great to see you. And again, everyone on our SEC channel, every Thursday night, Saturday night, and time to be determined over the weekend on Sunday, Kenneth is going to host our SEC coverage. Kenneth, let us know something about your Crunch Time Advantage platform.
Okay, so Mark, we built Crunch Time Sports Advantage to really give listeners a unique perspective on college football. So with everything going on, as far as the betting side of it, as well as unique game analysis. So I'm going to be able to take listeners inside the huddle, inside the meeting rooms, and also give you that betting perspective from where the lines are going to be moving this upcoming season.
Kenneth, as you look at the SEC this year, of course, we're talking about the best conference in college football. I don't think anyone debates that at this point. I would love to be able to have the debate, but there is none at this point. And Alabama is, again, the national champion. What are you thinking in regards to storylines, and who do you think is really going to challenge? What do you think about this conference and the power structure as we are just about 3 to 4 weeks away?
Absolutely. So the first question will be, can Alabama repeat? They've done that once under the Nick Saban era. Can Georgia finally get over the hump and get to a college football playoff championship and actually win it, something they haven't done in over 4 decades? And Texas A&M, are they ready to take that next step?
Absolutely. Texas A&M coming off a fine 9-1 season, landed in the top 4 in the final AP rankings after a Orange Bowl win. Jimbo Fisher's looking for a quarterback. He's got an audition going on once the boys get back to fall camp between Haynes King and Zach Calzada, and should boast one of the best defenses in the SEC, if not the nation, with 9 starters coming back on a defense. LSU looking for a bounce back season after 5-5. But loaded with plenty of top 5 to 10 talent in the nation. So, Kenneth, in regards to the show that you're going to unveil here in the next couple weeks, and then again, as we get set for week 1 of college football launch on that Thursday night, how would you like everyone to kind of approach that show, and how do you see that rolling out? What's going to be your approach?
I'm looking forward to tapping into the best fan bases in the entire country. Like you said, it is the best conference, but not only the best conference, but it absolutely has the best fan base. So looking forward to having all 14 teams represented every week on the call.
Awesome. Kenneth, we thank you so much for stopping by to discuss what we're really excited about, and that would be an SEC show on our SEC channel. So everybody head on over there, subscribe to our SEC channel, where Kenneth is going to be hosting live shows following all game action. We will announce specific game times. We think we have a beat on that, but we'll announce specific times for the Thursday night, Saturday night, and Sunday shows every week during the college football season. Kenneth, we appreciate you stopping by. I'm excited and pumped to have you here at the Voice of College Football.
Mark, looking forward to it and glad to be a part of the show. And like I said, representing the best conference in all of college football, and can't wait to feel that energy.
Thank you, Kenneth. You have a great night.
Thank you, my friend.
All right. So that, again, is just a sample of what we're going to provide this fall post-game. Florida State, Miami, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Florida, Iowa, Michigan, and then again an SEC show to preview the weekend on Thursday night, wrap up Saturday, and also put a whole big bow on it on a Sunday afternoon, and we will get you those times. All right, and we're still working on more. And specifically, if you have anybody out there that you would love to see us pull in to host an Ohio State show, a Nebraska show, those two in particular, I would really love to get nailed down. But certainly Texas, Clemson, USC, those would be great as well. Alabama, of course. And so if you know of anybody out there, regardless of the team, even if you've seen where we have a team covered already, we would like to have 2, 3, and 4 people involved, because we want backups, because we don't want to let anyone down by missing a week. We want to have every game covered, number one. Secondly, it's always a better conversation than it is just a solo act. Truth be known, nail me to the wall on that one. We know what we do here, of course, with you, but to have that conversation is the way to go typically. So we are just trying to find the best people that know college football, that know what they're talking about. That's first and foremost. Secondly, can talk. They got to be able to talk, communicate, engage with all of you on the live chat. And we are going to take calls for some of these shows. We still have to work out with the call-in system, which shows we're going to be able to accommodate a call-in system. And then number three, we want people that are obviously going to show up and be reliable and be here for you each and every game. All right. So let people know out there that we've got post-game shows lined up already for these teams, and we're working on more. We are working on more than the SEC, Florida, Texas A&M, Iowa, Michigan, Florida State, Miami out of the ACC, Big 12, Oklahoma for now, Big 12, and Notre Dame. All right, now back to all of you in college football. And I'll lay it out there. Do we want to take calls? If we want to take calls, if there are people out there that want to call and you guys have things to talk about, I will set up the call-in system. I did not set it up because I wanted to introduce our three hosts. So again, that's Desmond Upshaw with Michigan. That's Kenneth Pruitt, SEC, and that's Corey Bratta, Iowa. And we have a host of other shows, as you just saw. But we will talk college football with you and get on the phone line. But I've got to set it up if you guys want to talk college football and get on the phone with me. If not, I'll just keep going through the comments here. McD wants to call it. I will set up the phone system just for McD. Give me a second, McD. Let me see some of these comments coming in here because we've got Hummus Hero. Hummus Hero, sorry, that would be hummus. I tried hummus for one of the. I thought I had hummus prior to this particular time, but I know that I was at the ESPN cafeteria, and I always needed bacon and cheese on my wrap. I just had to have some bacon, some cheese at the minimum, and then I would have them toss on some light spinach or something, like a few things to make it more healthy. I was never a lettuce and tomato guy, but I have forced myself in the last few years, 10 years, to put lettuce and tomato on my hamburgers and a few other things to just kind of push the vegetables on me. So this guy that I was hanging out with, he put together some kind of wrap with hummus on it. And so I thought, tonight, give me what he's got. And that was the first time I remember actually for sure having hummus. Now, just in the last couple of months, I was traveling and I had some hummus and I thought it was amazing. I was shocked at how good it was. And we were dipping it in bread, like just amazing bread in hummus. So anyway, that's not Hummus Hero, that's Hummus Hero. Mark, Brendan Gullick from Buckeyes Now, I don't know what that is, on SI is a knowledgeable guy. Okay, don't know if you know him, but he would be a great guest. Well, I don't know him, but I do now know who Brendan Gullick is. He probably doesn't know who I am. And I will contact him and see if he has any thoughts about doing an Ohio State postgame show. Because fortunately, we can provide people with a pretty large platform here. We've got about 2,800 subscribers on the Buckeyes channel, and most of them are dedicated. So understand that even though we've got like 27,000 subscribers here and we've got far less on those team-specific channels, because the people that subscribe to those channels are dedicated to that team. We saw this with the Oklahoma live show for particular, where when the Oklahoma live show was here on the main channel, and then we switched it over to the Oklahoma channel, we had more viewers on the Oklahoma channel because those people love Oklahoma football. I've got like 82 different fan bases here. And the same thing with Nebraska. We took the Nebraska show over there as soon as people understood that it was going to be there. More people watching it. Florida State, the same thing. So Brendan Gullick. Hummus Hero, thank you so much for the recommendation. Again, we are looking for quality people that know college football, that can talk, and that are going to be reliable to show up and to handle our post-game coverage, because I'm going to be right here talking everybody. And McD wants to call in. Moonbot. Nicholas with the Georgia prediction of 15-0. Somebody's looking for the voice. Okay. I don't see anything else here. Set up the phones, Mark. So Rich Bo's telling me to set up the phones, and McD. All right. Hummus is almost the perfect food. Well, I tell you, I had a bad perception of hummus before that last experience. I got to admit, I just thought probably tastes like nothing. It's probably disgusting. No, it was exceptional on the right kind of bread. Okay, you guys will. Nicholas wants me to take questions off the live chat because he doesn't want to get the wrong people calling. I got you, Nicholas. Yes, I doubt that Ohio State's going to join the SEC. But it becomes more and more likely just because the unknown and the ridiculous are becoming more and more likely in sports and in everything else in our society. All right, so this is going to take a second. Please stand by. Let's not lose about 50,000 viewers while we do this. I do appreciate that everybody that has found the channel recently, which is about 800 or 900 subscribers in the past, I'd say 10
Thank you
days,
for calling Call-In Studios host and call
you
screener
guys have
line.
done an amazing job joining me for all these live shows.
Enter your
It's been
6-digit
phenomenal.
PIN number.
Have you guys had a chance to catch my predictions? We got
Welcome,
more coming out
host.
tomorrow.
You have not
Maybe I'll
started a
release
show
3
session in Call-In
predictions.
Studio and cannot yet receive calls on Mark Rogers'
Okay.
voice of college
You guys are
football.
going to hear some really annoying
Dude,
elevator music
session.
here pretty soon.
Music will play until your
Hang with
session
me, hang with
begins,
me. Let's
or
see
you
how
may
fast
call
I can
back
type.
when you are ready.
Studio, there it is. Can anybody sing to this? This is probably maybe reminds you of, kind of reminds me of my mom a little bit. She is quite the pianist. This recording's a little warbly though. A little annoying. I think it's going to end right now.
Welcome, host. You
And
are now
we
in the
are
host room and can manage your
lined up.
callers from the Call-In Studio web interface.
Getting a personal call right now. But hey, here we are, 860-499-3332. I will post the number as soon as possible and remind everyone that you can not only contribute here through the Super Chat, but Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App are an option as well. And if any of you understand the filtering for YouTube, you may want to hit me up at Venmo, PayPal, or Cash App. Just search Mark Rogers TV. Mark Rogers TV at Venmo, PayPal, or Cash App. All right. And our number is 860-499-3332. Where is it? There it is. It's on the bottom screen right there. So McD, I'm going to give you like 20 seconds to call. Oh, I think he has already. Beat me to the punch. McD, what's going on?
Thanks for taking my call, Mark.
Of course I'm going to take your call. I set this thing up for you.
I appreciate it. I hope other people call in as well. But no, I'm literally only calling in just to make a quick point about this whole conference expansion thing. No, everything's getting overblown. I just want to tell everybody what's going to happen here at the end. The SEC staying at 16 with Oklahoma and Texas. The ACC will go to 18 with West Virginia and joining to be 15, and then they're going to snag Memphis, Cincinnati, and UCF from the American. Then the Big Ten, Kevin Warren's going to disappoint me because he's going to go get Kansas and Iowa State because of AAU schools or whatever the tag that the Big Ten wants. The Big 12 will dissolve, and the rest of the teams, the Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, and Kansas State will go to the Pac-12, and the Pac-12 will snag Boise State out of the Mountain West. I know some of the Pac-12 people are going to be like, oh, the academic standards. I think the Pac-12 is going to throw that out the window since they're so far behind everybody else. And then you're going to see TCU and Baylor jump to the Mountain West, along with North Dakota State and South Dakota State, and they're going to find another team somewhere to get 16 there.
All right. Well, we need some kind of graphic display on that because I lost it about halfway through. But you certainly thought this through, McD. So you see the SEC standing pat, and the ACC is going to go after 4 to get to 18.
Yeah. I think they're going to panic a little bit.
UCF, West Virginia, Memphis, and who?
Cincinnati.
Okay, that makes sense. And then the Big Ten.
They're just going to go back to Iowa State, as the Iowa guy said, and they're going to go out to Kansas.
Okay,
because they have that. Because they're going to.
Okay, 16. And then again, what happens to the rest of the Big 12 and Pac-12?
Pac-12 is going to go get Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, and Kansas State. They are not going to get TCU and Baylor. And they're either going to go out and get Boise State or BYU as a 16th team.
Okay. Do you understand that academically that many of those schools do not qualify for those conferences? So they're going to have to either change that guideline or that's not going to happen.
I think the Pac-12 is going to change the guideline.
Okay. That the likes of Texas Tech and Oklahoma State and Boise State are worth changing the guideline.
I thought Texas Tech made the guideline, but I think they will. I think they have a new commissioner in there. They don't have Larry Scott, who basically, let's be honest, that guy was a joke and then some. And I think this new commissioner, I think he's going to go in there, and I think he's going to make some big changes to the Pac-12. I mean, they have to get into that Texas market. Even if it's just Texas Tech, they gotta get into that Texas market.
Okay. Well, I don't think that it doesn't make sense. If the ACC is going to go past 16, everything that you just stated there for me makes sense with the ACC, except for Memphis. But of course, they need Memphis to get to 18. So if they are committed to going after the other 3, then they need Memphis, unless Notre Dame's going to join. Then that would be the perfect scenario for the ACC to go to 18, not take Memphis, get Notre Dame.
I think Notre Dame's staying independent. I think they'll try very hard after Notre Dame, but then I'm not going to get Notre Dame.
Okay. All right. It's a good rundown.
And then I think
Baylor
and TCU go to the Mountain West.
Sure.
Both of them.
The Mountain West over the American Conference. Because the American Conference is going to be down. They're going to be down 3 of their biggest schools.
I think the American might explode. I think the American might take a step back.
Well, if what happens is what just lines up with what you just outlined, the American Conference is in trouble.
I think they're going to just try to get as many Conference USA teams, like a UAB or MAC schools. It won't surprise me if a JMU from the FCS gets brought up to play in the American. But I think they're going to take a step back at the end of this.
Well, that is a worst-case scenario for the American Conference. The American Conference right now sees itself as the 6th best conference, and with the Big 12 crumbling, as possibly an opportunity to step up in class. But if they lose their 3 heavyweights, bye.
I think UCF isn't too good of a location for one of these Big Four conferences not to pass up on.
All right, McD. Anything else?
No, just wanted to basically just give my 2 cents on it. Thanks for taking my call, Mark. Go Terps.
Thanks, McD. All right, good questions coming in here. Let's get to them right now and comments. So, Brian says here, the Big Ten is a longstanding relationship with the Pac-12. We talked about that a few minutes ago. I cannot see the Big Ten rating them. I don't see that as well. It's not the Big Ten style. It's a conservative conference. They've got a relationship with the Pac-12 that they respect. It's not just a athletic relationship, but from the standpoint of academics. The ACC is another thing, though. I think the Big Ten could take Virginia, North Carolina, or Georgia Tech. That would be a much better get for the Big Ten from a market standpoint, with Washington, D.C., all those exploding North Carolina markets, Charlotte, Raleigh, Winston-Salem, as I understand it, all those are exploding markets, places to be, people moving in, young people, and of course, Georgia Tech's in Atlanta. They all measure up academically. They all have first-rate academic schools, and not necessarily are they football juggernauts. North Carolina, of course, being the best example right now, but they get you into the South with still some kind of connection. I don't want to call it a deep connection to the North, but they can at least kind of string together. Virginia somewhat connects. I don't know if any part of Virginia connects to, well, Maryland. Maryland connects to Virginia, which connects to North Carolina, which connects to Georgia. So you can kind of thread it through to the deep South geographically. Not that that is going to cause the Big Ten to pull the trigger or refrain, but it does. They will explain that away in that sense, that Maryland and Pennsylvania tie to Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia. Academically makes sense. From a football standpoint, it's not great, but it gets you into the South. It gets you into those recruiting places that right now is only a hotbed for Ohio State and to a lesser degree Penn State and Michigan, and that's pretty much, those are the only teams that can go to the states we're talking about and pull out really good players. If you go to Georgia's top 100, yeah, Nebraska will pull out a player or two and some other teams as well. But in terms of going after the very best players in those 3 states, it's Ohio State, and it may be Penn State once in a while, and Michigan. So I think that's a great move for the Big Ten. That gets them so much more in every phase. Eyeballs, money, market size, recruiting footprint, and actual, I think, long-term football success over Iowa State and Kansas. Iowa State catches people's eye right now because of their recent success in Matt Campbell. But long term, that's the better play. I like that. But that's 3 schools. That takes the Big Ten to 17. Those 3 and Iowa State to get to 18. I would go after, now that I'm thinking about it, to get to 18, I would go after those 3 and UCF if I was the Big Ten. Because once you make that path to the Deep South in Atlanta, UCF's right down whatever highway that is, straight down. And you guys know I've been clamoring about UCF for anybody who will take them, whether it's the ACC or the Big Ten beats them to the punch. One of those two, go get UCF. If there are going to be major changes to the sport, if we're going to stand pat where we are right now, then that's different. And the Big Ten might do that. If the Big Ten doesn't believe as though anything else is going to happen and that the sport is not going to continue to be rearranged, then they probably would stay put, as Joel just mentioned. The Big Ten wants to be the best, but they are not hell-bent on being the best like the SEC in spite of everything else. Regardless of what else they have to do, they don't need to poach schools from other conferences or spend a gazillion dollars or just make radical moves just to prove that they are the best football conference. The Big Ten will not go to those lengths that the SEC would be going to if their position was threatened. The Big Ten wants to be competitive athletically, of course, wants its football schools to be competitive, but also to stand up academically and make money. So the Big Ten's been able to, it's pretty remarkable to think about what the Big Ten has been able to accomplish in football with the migration of population to the South and the West, and with most of the players 40% of the football players as of a couple of years ago were in Texas, Florida, and California. Now Georgia has caught California, but still that none of those states are in the Big Ten footprint. And the Big Ten has been able to stay competitive on the field and been able to make as much money as the SEC and more money than the SEC despite disadvantages. I agree, Matthew. You can't add athletic programs based on recent success unless there is a well-founded trajectory. And I don't see that anywhere. So Greg believes that the Pac-12 schools that we've discussed are the true targets and not Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia Tech, Pitt, and Duke because of the we discussed that the other day as well. Look at that. Paul coming up with the Big Ten dropping Rutgers and Maryland. If you buy into the theory that ESPN runs the sport, then what Fred says would be the case. Some people think that this is going to become an alliance between Fox, the Big Ten, and the Pac-12, and then ESPN, the ACC, and the SEC. Has a conference ever dropped a school? I made the statement the other day, no, and I believe that's true. I did the quick take over the decades, and I came up with no one. The Houston market, I got to tell you that I don't know exactly what to think about these major TV markets that have NFL teams. It's almost as though where Ohio State is with Columbus is the perfect scenario from a numbers standpoint, that they have an NFL-sized, a small NFL-sized city, the size of Jacksonville or Buffalo, but there's no NFL team there. And so they've got a large city with large population, and within 2 hours, Cleveland and Cincinnati and Dayton, Pittsburgh's not far away, Indianapolis, population all around Ohio, but no NFL team in Columbus, and that's Ohio State. I don't know if that could be similar success for Memphis. Houston, again, NFL town. TCU right there in Dallas, but the Cowboys completely rule that market. So I don't know that TCU is that valuable. All right. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. We've got Dominic on the line. Dominic.
Hey, Mark.
Hello. What's going on?
Nothing much, really. So, I just cannot believe we are 4 weeks away from the college football season. Honestly,
4.
I am hoping my state, yes, I said 4, honestly willing to see how my hometown state, that being Virginia, hoping how to see they will do.
I had no idea you were a Virginia fan. You've called this show how many times? You're a Virginia fan?
I mean, I've called in here a lot of times, and I was born in the state of Virginia. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, you were born there. Okay. You were born in Virginia. Are you
Yes.
a Virginia fan?
Yeah, I was a fan of the Virginia Cavaliers since, 2015?
Okay. So you're a big Brennan Armstrong fan.
Pretty much. Yes, I am
Okay.
a big
All
Brennan
right.
Armstrong fan.
Excellent. So
And,
how are those
throughout
Cavaliers
the
going to
season,
do?
I'm hoping they do well, and I also hope that they will make the playoffs, because I'm not sure if they've made the playoffs before. I think they have.
So there's only been a playoff since 2014, Dominic.
Yeah.
And the year that Virginia only lost 5 games would have been the closest that they came to making the playoffs. Had they only lost 4 less games, they might have had a chance of making the playoffs that year. But they lost 5 instead of 1. So they didn't make the playoffs. That would have been in 2019. So that was their close run at the playoffs. Virginia football going 9-5 in 2019. They needed to go 14-1.
Yes, that was their closest run. I
13.
can't believe they came that close, but I'm willing to see how they do this season.
I released my Virginia prediction the other day.
Oh, you did?
I did. My prediction on the big Virginia season. Yes.
Wow, that is honestly, I'm happy that you made that. I'm gonna have to go check that out.
Yeah, check it out.
Thanks
Let
for
me
the
know
call,
what you
Mark.
think.
All right, I definitely will. Have a good night.
All right, Dominic. You too. Dominic is a Virginia fan. Okay. Let's take our next call here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's George in Portland, Oregon, the Florida Gator, chomp chomp.
Can you be a little bit more specific, George? I don't know that I know who this is.
I'm the old guy from
The old
way
guy,
back
Portland,
10 years ago when you
Oregon,
started.
Gator fan. Anything
All
else
right.
you got for me?
You can go back. You can go back and listen to this later and get the details, but
Okay.
you need to set up a trust. It's called a 508c1a,
Okay.
so you never pay taxes again. It's common law, private, ecclesiastic. You become the trustee And the trust provides for your whatever you need. If you need a yacht, the trust buys you a yacht, for advertising purposes. So you can race it in the World Yacht Races for advertising. Whatever your trust needs, you do. But the reason I'm saying this is I have an idea for a business. You make college football playing cards. Like we used to buy packs of gum with baseball cards. You remember?
Oh, yeah.
Let's get into that NIL shit. On every trading card, it'll say Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, or whatever you want it to say. Mark Rogers Trust, Mark Rogers TV, Mark Rogers. You get it? Your name's on there, and then there's the name of the picture and his signature and facsimile, and you have packs of them, and you sell them for like $5 a pack, and you distribute the money evenly to all the college football teams in America. If their player will give you one card and allow you to,
All right, let's think this through, George. So first of all, we need a picture of that player.
Right, they're going to have to give up the picture.
So we can't steal pictures off the internet because we'll get sued.
Name, image, likeness. Well, you can steal one every here and there, but don't do it. It's not worth it.
Okay, then we got to contact the player, and we've got to pay them a certain amount of money.
You get it to where they call you. You know what I mean? Do they want in? It's like worth blank amount of money a year,
Well,
like they get $2 off every pack. You get 3, they get 2,
How much money do you think it costs to produce cards?
All I know is I want a Quinn Ewers trading card. And
all I know is that if you bring up something like that, I want to figure out how it can possibly work.
This is just a way to give players money. Look, we all do super chats. People love to give away money. We need somewhere to give money to college football players. We want them all to get $10,000 a week. Everybody will contribute. And the way we're going to get away with it is we're going to pretend we're selling trading cards. And we'll actually send them the cards. Like if anybody wants it, here's a card. But all we care about is the $5 or $10 or 15 or 50 or whatever you want to charge.
Well, George,
it's just a way to get the players money. We need to give every school equally a ton of money for their players. Anybody they want to give us a picture of, we will sell their cards, and you will get your cut.
So as Nicholas is pointing out on the chat here, is that you are openly promoting and advocating tax fraud.
No, it's not tax fraud. Are you insane? Listen, nobody's ever seen Rockefeller or Rothschilds or Donald Trump's or any billionaire's tax return because they have a 508c1a. And C1A sounds a lot like CIA, doesn't it? There's literally a trust the IRS won't tell you about. No tax lawyer will help you with because it's private. You either do it privately, and nobody can comprehend on a dollar bill. It says this bill is good for all debts, both public and private. Nobody in a freaking world understands the difference between public and private. But there's two worlds. You can live in whichever one you want to. I choose to live in a private world. Yeah. It's just because it's more convenient. I don't get any mail. Mark, I get 3 pieces of mail a month. I get an electric bill and some other thing, and that's it. My mailman loves me. They've asked me before, how do you do this? How come you don't get no mail? Because I'm private. You don't send me mail. Not unless I request it, It's all true, Mark. It's all true. I couldn't make that shit up. So anyway, set up a 508c1a trust. I know how you can do it. You go to Liberty Aid Academy. It's on YouTube. The guy might seem like a little bit of a wingnut sometimes talking about the crystal dome and the rainbows, but trust me, my kid's been doing this shit for 20 freaking years. He saved like $700,000 on taxes. He has an agreement with the IRS and the governor and the Secretary of State. You have to sit down and write a letter and tell them what you're doing. And I taught him how to do it. I'm his dad. I wouldn't lie to you. I wouldn't lie to my kid. God set us free. We're all free. But you can volunteer to be a slave if you want to.
You and Nicholas need to get together on this.
Slavery. There's no such thing as involuntary servitude on this earth. To this day, nobody's getting in trouble for any of this. It was all voluntary. Everything people do is voluntary. They're voluntarily doing what they're doing because you have an option. There are options, But it takes reading and studying for 5 minutes, or even giving a shit at all.
Okay. All right, George. We're going to get back to the college football. I'm going to let you go.
Trading cards.
Trading
cards, and some of them can be actually signed by the player, but those go at a premium.
And a 508.
Mark, you should do it.
And a 508 C1.
C1A, C1A, Liberty Aid Academy. Listen, I want to say he's the only guy in America doing it, but a lawyer firm in Virginia just opened up. It's the first time a lawyer's ever done it, ever in the history of the world. Some lawyer firm just started doing this for people. You know what I mean? They would never talk about it before today, but just in the last month or two, there's actually a lawyer firm that will do this for you. But you don't want someone to do it for you. It's private. You do everything you do yourself. And you never have to talk to IRS again, ever, not one time. You go online, you get your employer identification number, your IRS number. You open up a trust online. You take that paperwork to the bank. They open you a bank account, and you're out. You're free. You're gone. You don't ever have to deal with the government again.
All right,
Isn't
George.
that mind-boggling?
The line is forming behind you.
All right. I mean that in a good way, though. I'm saying this from a happy point of view, not a scared or sad point of view. This is good shit. I've been studying for like 30 years.
All right, George.
You know what I'm talking about.
Send me your account
later. All right. Go Gators.
All right. Okay. We may have another winner here coming up. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Chris.
Hey, Chris. How you doing tonight?
How are you?
I'm good.
I don't want to, I just, we talked a little bit about what I think. I mean, I just want to make it clear between us what I kind of want to come to like a consensus of opinion, I guess, about if we can. If we can't, that's cool too. I mean,
okay.
I hope I didn't give you the wrong idea about thinking that I knew better than you do. I don't. I know I'll be the first to confess that I don't, Mark. But with respect to 1984, and I was like 16 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can come to a consensus that, if nothing else, not maybe about who the better team was. I mean, that's not really what my point. Anybody can have an opinion. People could, if they wanted to, could maybe even vote their own team in. But I think
I'm not trying to determine who the best team is either. I'm not trying to do that either. I don't know who the best team was.
No. Well, anyway, I do a little bit of analysis, and it's kind of interesting because I wasn't doing it to prove anybody right or wrong. And I think I kind of mentioned it to you in a previous way that, actually what I was able, after all the games were played, what I was able to the conclusion that I was able to draw was that Washington and Brigham Young were about the same. And that's not me trying to discount Washington. That's not me trying to elevate BYU. So really, that's an example maybe of a season where nobody will ever know because of the circumstances. So we could pick a team. I mean, that's okay too. I'm sure that's kind of what people do anyway. It's like, well, they're going to, especially if they're a Husky fan, they're going to say, well, I think that Husky team would have demolished BYU or whatever. Where I have a problem with it, though, is when it becomes kind of a political thing about whether BYU even belonged there. And, I was only 16 at the time, but, my own opinion at the time was that they earned the right to be considered. And that's what I just, whether they were the best team or not, I guess I couldn't really say. Obviously I wasn't part of it. We followed it because of where I live. I live in Colorado. So there were a lot of people that were following it, but in terms of actually knowing who the better team was, I couldn't really say. I don't know.
So basically,
And
after
I
all
don't
those
know that it's wrong.
conversations, Chris, if I'm hearing this clearly, then after the number of conversations we had, plus I at one point counted the number of times that you commented to the channel, whatever that number is, about 30, that you don't have an opinion on who was the best team in 1984.
No, I do.
Okay,
I do. That's not my point, though.
Okay.
I guess maybe let me try to explain it a little bit differently. Now we're talking about fast forward to like present day, I guess. Now that the contract is okay, who are we going to include? Right? Isn't it kind of now who are we going to include? It's not whether BYU qualifies. It's whether we'll include them, right? Isn't that kind of what it is? Now the conversation is totally different. It's like, who are we going to include? Will it include BYU or will it not? And I don't know that I like that because. I think a team shouldn't necessarily be discounted simply because maybe, well, I don't know. It has to be pick a team really. You could pick Coastal Carolina, anybody really. Well, they're not probably going to be admitted because they don't have a strong history behind them, right? Coastal Carolina probably isn't going to be. Even last year, I don't think they would have been included. I could be wrong, but I guess my question would be, with respect to picking a team. Why was it so important that we remove what was working, or at least what I think was working? Number one, number two, whatever you want to call it. Was that really being unfair to other teams that weren't really deserving to be considered? And I don't really understand what benefit comes from limiting, I guess, what I think is limiting access to teams that fit the mold, I guess. We're going to have 12 teams, right? But they're going to be like mostly ACC, Big 10, Big 12, Pac-12.
What's
I don't
working?
even know that there'll even be one.
Okay.
I don't even know if there's going to be one outside that.
If I can stop you right there, when you say the system is working, are you talking about the previous system, the discussions we were having concerning 1984 when people were voting for the national champion? Are you talking about the current system when you say the system is working?
Well, I guess what I was trying to tell you, maybe it's not clear in how I do it. The conclusion I came to from 1984 was that what we actually needed to resolve the condition of what team was the better team was the actual championship game, having a pairing between Washington and BYU after all that happened. Not like I know it could have happened before, it probably wouldn't have. But after all that happened, after BYU beat Michigan, after Washington beat Oklahoma. And I know that wasn't it wasn't set up for that at the time, but why isn't that sufficient now? I mean, why do we have to go from 4 to 8 to who knows how many? Why can't we just have 2 teams like before? I don't understand I'm confused as to what really we gain by taking away something that I feel like works. I feel like it works. Maybe you don't, maybe nobody else does. Yeah, there was a confusion about maybe which team was better at the end of the season. But couldn't we have just put BYU and Washington together in a championship game rather than have to vote? You say vote. I think all the vote really does is to tell you who goes, and so I think the vote would have actually put both of those teams in it. So why couldn't we have just used the, I don't know what you would call it. I guess it's I know there was another season where the same thing happened, but you just take the vote. I guess the vote. I'm not saying you the vote because that's not how I do it, but. Why couldn't we just put BYU and Washington in the title game after all the bowl games and say, let's find out who the better team was? Why isn't that an option?
Okay.
Now,
hang on. If I'm listening to this correctly, in one breath you told me that you thought the system worked. The voting worked.
It does work. No, I think the bowl pairings work.
Hang on. Let me finish. You're telling me that the voting system worked. Okay. And then in the next sentence, you said,
yeah,
but there had to be another game played between Washington and BYU for the national championship. Therefore, the voting system did not work. If there had to be another game played that didn't exist, that nobody agreed to. So that system did not work.
I'm saying that it worked as far as picking a champion. I'm not saying it worked as far as
any system can pick a champion. again,
Go ahead.
I asked you if you thought the system worked, the voting system, the polls, and if I am catching this correctly, you believe that that system worked. You support that system, but then you thought that there should have been another game played in the 1984 season to determine the champion.
Or
That means
or
the system
absent of
didn't
that.
work.
Okay. Or absent of that, we could. Well, I kind of gave you another option. I don't know if you remember it or not, where BYU actually didn't meet the standard that I give. But you could have. It's going to probably not make much sense to you, but Iowa actually carried a fair amount of leverage forward after beating Texas in the they had Chuck Long. Iowa did. Anyway, they beat Texas pretty bad.
In the Freedom Bowl.
It was kind of yeah.
Yeah.
But Iowa I had them number 24. Obviously that's by themselves. This is the interesting thing. It might not be interesting to you, and if it doesn't, I apologize in advance.
It's not that it's not interesting. I'm not following the line of logic that you're bringing a team with 4 losses into the conversation about the national championship.
Well, can I maybe explain how that works?
Absolutely.
I mean, all right. You have to kind of like suspend disbelief a little bit to kind of give me a little bit of UCLA. This is all going to kind of be kind of like crazy stuff if you don't really follow what I'm going to say. But UCLA actually won against Miami, Florida in the Fiesta Bowl by beating Miami, who was the defending. I mean, do we agree that maybe Miami was the defending national champion, or is that another thing I'm going to have to demonstrate? Anyway, by beating Miami, Florida, UCLA.
Okay, I got to stop you right there.
You don't agree.
Number one.
So you don't agree that Miami won?
Well, yes, it's a matter of fact, historical fact, that they were voted the national champion the previous season. Yes, that's historical fact. That
but I think
the way in which the champion was determined, they won the poll, the vote. Were they the undisputed national champion? No. They had one loss, just like other teams in the country had one loss. So it could be disputed. Again,
they're not even my champions.
Again, the 83 championship, but I don't know. You're not going to be able, I guarantee this right now. So you could probably save.
I think I can.
Hang on just a second. Let me finish my statement. You can save your time and breath right now in trying to prove to me why a team should be considered in the national championship race of 1984 by bringing results from 1983 into it. They're 2 completely different football seasons with completely different teams playing. Yes, there's a correlation between the teams because certain teams have players, obviously, that play multiple years and played the next season, but you cannot in any way use games that were played in 1983 to determine the 1984 champion.
Okay.
That's
can
not
I just
valid.
offer maybe a... Well, I know it doesn't register in maybe conventional thinking. Don't get me wrong. Miami, Florida played Auburn.
It doesn't register in any reasonable thinking, conventional or otherwise.
Well, let me just again try to explain my position, whether you like it or disagree with it or whatever. Miami, Florida played Auburn the following season, kickoff classic, I believe.
Sure.
Against Auburn, I think it was 2018.
Yes.
Close game, 2018.
Yeah, I watched that game. Sure.
I don't know the whole. At the very least, I think it's fair to say that Miami demonstrated that they were capable of beating Auburn. I mean, they did. So,
Sure.
I mean, different season, I understand. Well, the same thing applies to BYU the following season. They played Boston College.
They weren't the same teams playing that played the previous season.
But in terms of demonstrating that they could, field a competitive team against, Brigham Young did the same thing the following year against Boston College. I mean, that was kind of what helped put BYU's championship a little bit more clearly, I guess, in the national picture. Anyway, when UCLA beat Miami, Florida in the Fiesta Bowl, they won what I consider to be I use a different system, I guess, than what you're used to, but that carried over into the following season. And when BYU played UCLA in '85, UCLA was able to carry forward that title all the way up until USC played Alabama in the Aloha Bowl. They played for a belt. It's called the belt. I don't know if you know about the belt. And you can look it up. And if you're having difficulty understanding you can actually look it up. It's not something I invented. It's something somebody else invented. But if you go, you'll find that Alabama in 1985 defeated USC in the Aloha Bowl. And
24-3. I know. Yes.
Okay.
I know about all the games that you're citing
relevant?
that were played. But you cannot carry.
Do you understand why that's relevant?
No, I don't understand how you can cite games from 1985 and 1983 to determine what should have been decided on the field in 1984.
Well, I think it makes sense because Alabama lost to Penn State 6-3. And so Penn State was able to take that title that Alabama won all the way to the Orange Bowl. I guess it was the Orange Bowl against Oklahoma. That's where it comes into play. Alabama won the belt, but the championship was decided between Oklahoma and Penn State was it the Orange Bowl? I'm thinking it probably was. And so, yeah, it's direct. It's like almost a direct comparison between the two. That's where it becomes important.
They're not the same.
You might say, well, the Aloha.
They are not the same teams when you are skipping years and grabbing teams from other seasons. It's not the same team.
But I'm not skipping years. I'm talking about the 1984 Aloha Bowl, and I'm talking about the 1980. I'm sorry, don't get me. I'm talking about the 1985 Aloha Bowl, and I'm talking about the 1985 national title. Penn State defeated Alabama in 1985, 6-3. That was how they carried their championship all the way to the Orange Bowl, and then that's how Oklahoma ultimately won the Orange Bowl. And that's an example of Oklahoma winning a title based on mostly based on Penn State's accomplishment, more so than with their own, because they'd gotten beaten. Oklahoma, I think, had gotten beaten by Miami, and Miami actually went undefeated until they lost to Tennessee in the Sugar Bowl, I believe, in '85. So this is the same season. I'm confusing you because I'm using the 1984 as like the
Miami had a loss before they went to the Sugar Bowl.
2 losses.
But anyway, they had a loss before they went to the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah. I mean, I think I don't remember. I think that I don't know. That's not really exactly what I'm getting. I'm just trying to explain to you that the title game between Oklahoma and Penn State was a legitimate title game mostly because of the fact that Alabama won what I consider to be what is it, it's called the belt. It's an associate title sort of thing. I mean, BYU won one in '96, for example. BYU won a belt championship in '96 after they beat Kansas State, and the way they got there is they beat Tulsa, and I think Tulsa had beaten somebody pretty good to get the belt from the previous season, right? 1995. Yeah, it carries. That's the nature of the belt. It carries over from season to season. And so, what I could do with 1985 then is take the fact that Alabama won the belt. You can take that into 1986, and it should lead to the team that wins the. I don't know, Penn State I think won in '86, but it should take you directly to the national championship in '86. It should do that. You should be able to take the fact that Alabama won the belt, and it should tie directly into Penn State winning the championship in '86. It should, if what I'm telling you is factual, and I think it does. And the 1990 season that you keep bringing up, that Colorado won the belt that year, by beating Notre Dame. That was their championship game was in the Orange Bowl against Notre Dame. I'm not saying the belt's kind of like the mythical part of it, but you can use that belt. And it actually ties together real closely with what the CFP does. I know it's the playoff. I understand it's the playoff, but really, if you look closely at what the CFP actually does, it's not 100%. Don't get me wrong, but it's real close to being the belt. Generally speaking, and you might even notice sometimes on the podium, you'll see a player maybe wearing a belt, or you'll see like it.
I'm going to remind you of something that you may have lost track of, but something that I need to track, and that's that we're not having a private conversation. So I guarantee you that the majority of people that are watching or listening cannot follow what you're talking about. And then many of
I think they
them
probably could.
that probably can follow it don't care.
Well, it's as simple as the fact that Alabama, played Penn State and lost. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I mean, Alabama won the belt and they lost to Penn State, and then Penn State lost to Oklahoma.
All right, Chris.
So it's that simple.
You are
I mean,
welcome to
it's not that
call
hard to-
anytime, and but we will bid adieu tonight. Thanks for the call.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right. Let's get on to our next call. I believe we'll be talking about 2021. And I enjoy talking about college football history, but I cannot follow a line of thinking that's determining the 1984 national championship by stringing along games 10 years later. David, how are we doing tonight?
I'm still trying to figure out what a belt is, but that's
Yeah,
I guess
I didn't even want to ask.
But in any case, the man that gives college football his voice, Mark Rogers. How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right, I think.
I wanted to give you a call. I like that you did the call-in show earlier, but I don't like that I wasn't there to give you a call. So I wanted to chime in on the Quinn Ewers thing. Draw maybe a little bit of a parallel. I think you got to goes without saying. I wonder if you talked about this earlier, because I didn't get a chance to catch your call-in show, that, pretty much this has a lot to do with him trying to get there early, get as much, kind of prep as he can so he can be ahead of the game to eventually get himself to the NFL. I would say that would be the long and short. You talked about that in the previous show?
Yeah. I just think what he stated was very upfront. So he talked about NIL.
Yeah.
So that was the first and foremost thing that he cited was I can make a buck right now. And that's very forthright of him to state that and not try to mask it in anything else. But also that he can be developed by one of the best in the business, Ryan Day. And he didn't state, I don't believe anything about the NFL draft, but simply once he gets himself into the system, of course, he expedites the process by 1 year.
Yeah, I think that, it's no secret. I think we can both agree that's always been one of the biggest straws, if not the biggest straw to Ohio State, is the fact that the pure amount of players that we send to the NFL. Statistically, the most first-round draft picks in the history of college football is a pretty nice statement to make to recruits. And obviously what we've done in the last, 15 or 20 years or so, actually, I think the run really started in that Cooper era in the 90s when he started. Because I think if you look back on it, Mark, I think we had the second most first-round draft picks in the 90s. Only we might have been tied with Florida State in the 90s for the most first-round draft picks. I think it was very close. I don't know if you ever looked that up, but
most draft picks in the 90s. I would have to take a guess. I've never seen any list that I recall.
Yeah, it's the first-round draft picks. I think it was us and Florida State that were right up there over that period of time.
Sure.
And that's what I was just saying. I think over that period of time, he kind of started that. Tressel took it and ran with it, and obviously Meyer, has even taken it to a different level. So I think that's a big part of it. How does this strike you as any similar to the situation? Remember the Maurice Clarett situation when he was in a real hurry to get to the NFL?
Does this strike me as similar to what Maurice Clarett? Well, I think what his situation was is because he had bad blood between him and the university because of the situation with his friend and the funeral accommodations and travel, and he didn't like the way that was handled, and that caused a big rift between he and the football program and the athletic department in particular, and Tressel was kind of caught in the middle of it because he was close to Maurice Clarett, but it was after that 03.
Yeah, but correct me if I'm wrong, Mark. I thought he started talking about going to the NFL like in September of that year before he even had that situation with his friend.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that that certainly could have been the impetus for him to make that decision.
Okay. Okay, because I could have sworn he did like an ESPN magazine very early in that season about talking to go to the NFL. Like even before that situation came about, I thought he was even talking about it like after even like the first few games of his freshman year. That's why I was kind of maybe trying to draw that parallel. He very early on was trying to get to the NFL as quickly as he can. And I'm wondering if this guy enrolling early is about him getting prepped to get to the NFL. Although now that you bring up the NIL, I would imagine that that's got to be a big component too.
Yeah, I
don't
think
know
we've seen very simply what is important to these guys, and I can't blame them.
Yeah. I still cannot believe the Saban situation about that quarterback. What did he say? The quarterback up there he could possibly earn 7 figures or something like that.
Yeah, that was Saban's statement. Since then, I've seen $800,000.
Wow. Yeah, I thought he had said something about. Didn't he say about $1 million or over $1 million?
Yeah, apparently Saban said $1 million.
Yeah, that's what I thought I heard. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I tend to agree with folks. I mean, the more I think about it, I can understand, and it's got to be tough for these athletes to see their jerseys being sold, even though there's not a name on the back of that jersey. If they're selling said number of the best player on the football team, and it's that best player's number, and they're making money off of it, one would think that a player should be able to earn off of that. My question about this is just where does this take us in the future, and how does this wash out? And what does this look like, a few years from now? And does this lead us down a road that's closer to paying the players down the road? I don't know if we go down that road, but could be a possibility.
Well, I'm not going to say that it doesn't, but I've got to think that on the other hand, that this would take the place of the schools paying the players. The players have received now an outlet, an opportunity to earn money aside from being flat out just paid, that they can now just kind of operate as everybody else does in society, but because of their occupation, for lack of a better term, they can go out and earn a buck. So I would think that would relieve the push to have them get paid formally by the university.
Okay, by being able to earn off name, image, and likeness, that pretty much takes the place of them having to pay said player said some money.
That's one line of thinking. But much like Nick Saban said, I said it a couple of weeks earlier when all this broke, I can come up with all sorts of theories, and it seems like every time I come up with a theory, I can also counteract my own theory to say, well, it could work in this direction, but the counterpoint is that it could sway in the other direction. So until we see actually things play out, Saban just stood with his hands up in the air to say, I'll tell you what I think in a year.
Right. No, I think I said that to you too, Mark. I'm taking a wait and see approach with this thing too. I think you have to let this thing play out for a few years and then see where we're at and see where it takes us, and see if it does cause any issues or any problems or, what have you. We have to see a sample size, I think.
The other thing to consider with the Bryce Young situation in particular, but this could hold true for anybody, is that, okay, he's making $800,000 to $1 million for a period of time. I don't know what the stated period of time is or what the contract is for doing some level of endorsement or work or something. Well, unless he signed an exclusive contract, if he is held to this contract and he needs to do X, Y, and Z, whatever that is, appear at something, do a commercial, do X number of social media posts, I would think that he's also in line to endorse all sorts of other things, that his earning potential is just now being tapped. This isn't the end of it
Right.
for him. And again, unless whomever said, we're Nike and we're giving you an exclusive contract and this is it, and you're shutting down yourself to anybody else. And I doubt if that would be the case, then he still has more opportunities to do more quote unquote work to earn more money.
I would agree. You know, like I said, Mark, I'm taking a wait and see approach with this thing, and we'll see where we're at. I didn't want to comment on the situation with the expansion of the conference because I know we talked about before about the Big Ten and the Pac-12 and the possible merger, and I know you talked about that before on the Buckeye show as well. I listened to the one gentleman you have on your show, that has the Notre Dame show, the Inside the Irish Breakdown show.
Ryan Driscoll.
That you have on?
Yeah.
Yeah. He was on one of the Buckeye shows I was listening to, and he had an interesting comment. I think the more and more I think about it, Mark, and I think some of the Buckeye people have talked about this too. I don't know what your gut feeling if you're a betting man. I think the Big Ten is going to stand pat. I mean, the ball is definitely in their court right now, but the more and more I think about it, I think that they're going to stand pat. I think that they're just going to say, listen, and, you know, he made a good point too. You know, the bottom line is that the other top tier programs in the Big Ten just need to get better. You know, Penn State and Michigan just need to get better. You know, they need to be playing at the very least at a top 10 level. And as I've said to you in the past, if you have them playing at a top 10 level and you have Wisconsin playing at a top 10 to 15 level with Ohio State playing at a top 2 or 3 level, then that's a really good conference. Is it the SEC? No. But that's still a very, very strong number 2 conference. I don't know. Are you feeling still that they're going to stand pat and just, you know, we're going to say that our programs are going to get better eventually? Or I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, they can go in about 3 directions. They can either go out to the Pac-12 and poach teams from the Big 12 or the Pac-12, I'm sorry, from the Pac-12, or go to the ACC and do the same thing. Well, that has not been done previously by any conference. The SEC was approached by Oklahoma and Texas, and that decision was made. However you want to size it up, it technically was an Oklahoma-Texas initiation. So for the Big Ten to go out and show themselves to be the league that is going to go out there and grab other teams and pry them out of the hands of other leagues, that is most likely going to damage those leagues to beyond repair. I don't think that they want to have that reputation, and I don't think that they'll do that. And I don't think that the schools left in the Big 12 have enough cachet from a football, money, or academic standpoint to be that attractive. And so they're probably in a state where they're not going to do anything unless there are more moves made by the SEC that is going to create an environment that's going to move us toward mega conferences in which the Big Ten would feel as though, okay, we have to partner officially with the Pac-12 and make some kind of large conference.
Yeah, I just keep coming back to what you talked about, which is the conservative nature of the Big Ten just in general. And they're saying, well, we're not going to overreact to what the SEC is doing. And then also just, you know, my lack of confidence in Kevin Warren's leadership as seen what happened last year. I know it was a COVID situation, and I know he was dealt a bad deal, but I thought he dealt with it about as poorly as a person could deal with it. And I think most people, most Big Ten fans, I know most Ohio State fans feel that way. So, I mean, that's where I come down. I think that the presidents and I think that the people in charge here are going to see this more as an isolated thing, and they're going to stand pat. And if they do add teams, I think it's not going to be, my gut feeling is it won't be the move that would strengthen them the most, which would be something with the Pac-12. I do think, Mark, and the one thing that they had debated, and you know, I know you mentioned UCF and I mentioned Cincinnati, By the way, what type of level of programs do you think both teams would be in the Big Ten? Do you think they would be like 8-4 programs, 9-3 type programs? I mean, just what are your overall thoughts on both of them individually?
I don't think that they would be long term, and I don't think that they would have been in the past. But based on what we've seen on the field out of Cincinnati the last few years and what we saw previous to that with UCF, I think that they would be 9-3, 8-4. That those teams were that good. Yep. I think it would be difficult for them to sustain it, although they could be much different programs within the blueprint and the confines of the Big Ten. They could turn into substantial programs.
I agree. I think if you open up the footprint of both conferences, which, I mean, obviously Florida has the Florida base, and, Cincinnati's been recruiting the Ohio guys that don't go to Ohio State. So, but if you open up the rest of the Midwest and, other parts of the East Coast to Cincinnati, there's no reason that they couldn't, at the very least, be Iowa, which is basically an 8-4, 9-3 program, right?
Yeah, and you would think that Cincinnati and UCF would have access to much better players than some of the programs that are successful in the Big Ten, Iowa and Wisconsin.
Right. And, depending upon, and also if you put them on that side of the division too, depending on where you put them, that's also could help their competitiveness as well. So, all right, Mark. Well, some good stuff tonight. Always a pleasure to talk to you, my friend.
Thank you so much, David. Have a good night.
You take care of yourself. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. There was a comment made several times during the previous live stream we did after the Quinn Ewers news came out, and then it's also displayed here by our guy Buyers Vacation Rentals LLC. Thank you so much for the super chat contribution. Appreciate that. Buyers Vacation Rentals LLC. What's the deal with Cade Klubnik beating out Quinn Ewers in the state championship and Elite 11 camp? Cade heading to Clemson, next Fields and Lawrence. Okay, so you got Cade Klubnik, who's got a very high rating as a Clemson commit. I'm looking at it right now just to get the numbers straight, out of Austin, Texas in the 22 class as well. Fourth rated quarterback according to the composite, 32nd rated in the nation. Number one quarterback rated by 247 Sports. So he committed back in March. And so it would be interesting. I have not had a chance. That comment was made a number of times in the previous live stream and made here again by Buyers Vacation Rentals. And I haven't seen the tape or seen the statistics from that state championship game to see who outplayed whom, but obviously Klubnik's team won the game. But somebody could take a dive into that. Let's see if we can find something real quick here. All right, so this was the state championship game in Texas, and I may not be able to access that article because it's paid. Okay, Ewers and Klubnik, AT&T Stadium. Ewers is 6'3", 195. Klubnik at 6'2", 180. Top two quarterback recruits in the state. Looks like the top two in the nation, although Klubnik's number 4. Okay, so Ewers in the state championship game hit on 23 of 39 for 351 yards and 3 touchdowns. And Klubnik was the game's offensive most valuable player in the state's biggest stage to make his case as one of the elite quarterbacks in the country. Where are his numbers? He went 18 of 20 for 220 and a touchdown, had 17 carries for 97 yards. So he must be a mobile guy. That performance in the state championship game that Byers is alluding to right there for Klubnik happened after he did not throw a pass in practice all week after getting his shoulder banged up against the team that they played in the state semifinals. So they both had really good state championship games. There was a ton of points scored in the game and quite the track meet. And Klubnik's team won, and he had an almost perfect day, 18 for 20 for 220 and 97 yards on the ground. Ewers did throw the 3 touchdown passes and 23 of 39 for 351. Good stuff. Rod Farva's getting the inside scoop on the live chat to the belts and what in the world those are. All right, DeAndre, welcome to the Voice of College Football. DeAndre, what's going on?
Hey, man, how you doing, Mark?
I'm good.
So, to clarify something that people don't understand about that game that you're talking about,
yeah,
Cade and the other guy, excuse me, Cade played at a better school. That where he played at Westlake.
Yeah.
And I was looking at that way back. Cade played at a better school. Like his team was better than Cutney's. And I'm a Clemson fan, so I root for Cade. But the fact is that he played at a better football school. If you go look at the people that came out of that school, it has legendary players in it. Westlake. So so Cade had better players around him, from what I understand. And I was back on that. Because if you remember, there's a quarterback out of Tennessee. He chose Alabama over Clemson. And Clemson went hard after Cade and got him. So, that guy that's going to Ohio State, he's really good. There's only been 7 perfect compository rankings, and he's one of them.
Yeah.
And I think Bitch Young was the other one. So that just shows you how good he is. But anyway, that brings me to a question that I have for you, Mark. We had a talk about perception the other day when we were talking about Miami. So I want to ask you this. Is Texas' perception of having great football overrated because of how good the high school football teams are? Because if you think about it, and I don't get me wrong, I know TCU and Baylor has had a little bit of run. I know Texas A&M, but nobody's been standing on the national scene for a long period of time. Even when you look at Texas, they disappear every now and then. And the reason why I bring it up the state of North Carolina from a basketball perception. Everybody knows North Carolina's a basketball state, and everybody knows Kentucky's a basketball state. But Louisville and Kentucky has been on the national stage, and all 4 Carolina State, Wake, and Duke has been on the national stage. If we look at Texas football has only had Texas on the national stage. I know SMU back in the 80s and Texas A&M with the wrecking crew had a little time, but not substantial period of time. So is it just a perception that we have of Texas football because how good the high school football is, or even how good Dallas Cowboys are?
Well, I hope not, and I don't think so, because Texas is right there with Florida producing the best football players in the country. So if you're talking about the high school football in Texas, if you run the numbers, Texas is right there neck and neck with Florida.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Because Texas high school football is so good, we have a perception that Texas University and college football is good. You see what I'm saying? But they don't last longer. You know what I mean? They haven't always been good. Like if you go through North Carolina and NC State basketball, you can find all type of NBA legends that came up in North Carolina. If you go look at Texas A&M, I can't really tell you outside of Johnny Manziel the last time they had a really, really great place in there. And it one of the top money-making schools in the whole country. Or Baylor, TCU, Texas Tech, they just don't seem like they have a staying power like you see with North Carolina in basketball. And North Carolina has a great history of basketball, high school and college.
Okay.
I guess the question, I guess,
I don't think people are overrating Texas. I don't think people are overrating the University of Texas and them playing football because people, at least myself, I'm not overrating them. I consider them to be a slightly better than average football team since 2009. They've won about 55, 58% of their games.
Texas football. I'm talking about all of Texas football, like Baylor, TCU, Texas, Texas A&M, whoever else is down there. You see what I'm saying? Like Texas University football all over, all the schools in Texas, is it overrated? I'm talking about all the schools, like A&M, everybody.
Well, most of the players on those rosters are from Texas, from the state of Texas, and that state has to support more teams than any other state in the country.
Right.
Or I guess it's close with California.
Okay.
I guess I'm not completely understanding that. I don't see anything great about Texas football at the collegiate level. Texas is a brand, and Texas is a power, and we care about Texas, and Texas gets talked about all the time because they have the potential of being great. They have a lot of money. They have a lot of facilities. Right. They have a lot of people that watch the games, a ton of alumni, a ton of fans in the stands, 100,000 and all that. But they haven't been any good for the most part, except maybe one season they were decent since 2009. So I don't overrate them myself. They are what they are. They're the most underachieving football program in the country in the last decade.
But that's what I'm saying. Maybe this might be better for me to say it like this. Let's go back to Miami, Florida, and Florida State in the 80s and 90s, the late part of the 80s up to 2001. Everybody admit that all those programs had a lot of talent. Majority of that talent came from the state of Florida. Mm-hmm. So you had those three schools being great at the same time. When you look at the state of Texas, the university system, none of those teams are great at the same time. You know what I'm saying? You never had a legendary game with Texas and Texas A&M. Not that I can remember. Or TCU, Baylor, or Texas TCU, or Baylor TCU. I don't know what happened in 1983, but that's what I'm saying. You could go back and point out great games between Florida, Florida State, Miami, Florida State, choke at dope, wide right. We can remember all those games.
Sure.
But if you say, let's go talk about Texas A&M, you can never bring up those type of games.
Yeah. There's never been
That's what I'm trying to say.
There's never been a time, to your point, you're correct. There's never been a time in the history of college football, and especially since the 60s, I will say for sure, that there have been three schools in Texas, in the state of Texas, that have been anywhere close to as dominant as Florida, Florida State, and Miami at the same time. No.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was getting at. That's why I brought up Carolina football, basketball.
Never.
Right. So, yeah, I should have said that in the beginning. So, I'm going to let you go after this. So, we all talking about, and you brought up the point that I brought up yesterday about the Big Ten possibility of moving from down to UVA, Carolina, and Georgia Tech because they're AAU schools. But what happened if the North Carolina legislature say, hey, if you don't take NC State, you can't take Carolina? So remember that happened with Virginia and Virginia Tech in the early 2000s, where the Virginia Tech said, where the legislature told Virginia Tech, told the ACC, if you don't take Virginia Tech, you're going to take Virginia out, or we're going to start funding Virginia. So what happened if that happens with Carolina and Virginia? I mean, I'm just saying that's a possibility. I know some people thought it was a possibility with Oklahoma that possibly could have happened.
What if that happens? Then it's going to happen. I don't know how to answer that question.
Right. Yeah. But everybody keeps thinking that. I know here in North Carolina, football is king for everywhere else. But here in North Carolina, basketball is king. And I guarantee you, there's a lot of legislatures that went to North Carolina and NC State that will refuse to let that happen. They'll leave it like let North Carolina Duke go. I mean, I wasn't born when this happened. They had an issue when Wake Forest left Wake County, where Raleigh is, go to Winston-Salem. They put up a major fight. So it's gonna be hard for those teams to go, even if they wanted to, because basketball is key. They really don't care about football like that. I mean, I know football makes the most money, but when it comes down to Carolina Blue divided lines, it's going to be hard for them to let that rivalry go. And people say, well, they can play non-conference games with each other, but it's nothing like playing twice a year in the ACC tournament. They live for that around here, Mark.
I hear you.
I mean, I never been to an Ohio State Michigan game, but I've been to a Carolina Duke game. I mean, they'll be hard pressed to get rid of that series. Even Carolina, NC State. I know NC State's been dormant since 1991 of basketball, but it'll be hard pressed for them to get rid of that. But Mark, I'll let you go, man. Y'all keep giving money to Mark. I mean, he's giving the best content out there in the on YouTube, and he's for the people. So
I appreciate
Mark,
that, DeAndre. We are doing our best. Thank you so much for the call, DeAndre. Appreciate that.
I gotta talk to George, man. He gotta start coming up with this crazy stuff. I couldn't even follow what he was talking about. But all right, Mark. You have a good night.
I'm right there with you, DeAndre. All right. I appreciate that. That pumped me up just a little bit, DeAndre. Thank you so much for letting me know that I'm still doing a good job, because I got to tell you, this show tonight seems like it's just doesn't seem like we've really gotten anything accomplished. But thank you so much for the call. We've got another call coming in. I refrain from trying to state what the voice recognition picks up, because I never think it's right. So welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, this is J-Dub calling in from Des Moines, Iowa. How are we doing this evening?
I am doing great. How's it going? From Des Moines.
Yeah, you know, if you don't mind, I would not. I don't want to talk about ACC basketball, 1984 national championships, or anything along, or maybe your tax status, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, we could bypass all of that. That would be phenomenal. Are we going to talk about the 2021 college football season? I'm hoping.
Yeah, if we could,
Okay.
if we could.
Yeah.
I enjoyed listening to your Hawkeye, your Iowa guy who's going to be on the Iowa channel earlier. I shoot sideline photography for Iowa State.
Okay.
So I'm looking forward to week 2. That's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun when Texas comes to Ames too. I want to get your opinion on this. I think you brought up a really great point that a lot of people maybe are overlooking or choosing not to see in this light. And that is the SEC did not poach the Big 12. They did not take an axe and attack the Big 12. The 2 best teams in the Big 12 came to the SEC. And I don't think you're going to see these conferences actively go out and try to rip somebody away from another conference. I just don't see that happening. And I'm wondering if I'm starting to form the opinion that this big move here has kind of shaken the rafters a little bit. And maybe now, just maybe, everybody cools their jets for a year or two and kind of see how this plays out, instead of doing something really crazy like all of a sudden rushing to these super conferences. Maybe everybody just takes a conservative route and let's just see how this works for the next couple of years.
For as much as I don't like what happened with Oklahoma and Texas leaving the Big 12 and the SEC picking them up, and I don't fault the SEC for sure. There is in no way do I fault the SEC. Do I fault Oklahoma and Texas? I understand their position. I understand that they can upgrade their status. They can better their situation by leaving. So I don't fault them as much. They obviously, as you stated, initiated the move. So the only thing that tends to exasperate situations like this is fear. The fear of what is going to happen next. Do we have to do something rash to counter that or to beat our competition to the punch? So hopefully that doesn't take hold. That usually is what cascades many of these situations in the past when like the Big East fell apart is certain schools left. Therefore, it just kind of imploded because the other teams, there's a breaking point to which there's a breaking point, and we don't know where that is with the Big 12. And that's one of the reasons why I stated in one of the videos or call-in shows that the Big 12 would seemingly need to act because they can't sustain their Power 5 status with the 8 teams that they currently have. So people, obviously, when the news broke, Oklahoma, Texas, I'm being inundated with the question, is the Big 12 going to survive? And my initial response, not that I have complete wisdom of this at all, but my first thought was if they can beat the possible raid on the conference, and not necessarily that it would be initiated by other conferences, but that the schools would scatter to look for a safe and secure conference. If they can beat those moves to the punch by dragging in some semblance of Boise State, Memphis, Houston, SMU, whomever it is, if they can solidify and secure the conference before the other schools leave, then there's a hope, there's a prayer that the Big 12 can sustain itself and stay.
Well, to me, it seems like it's almost kind of a game of chicken in the Big 12 right now. Do the ADs, do the presidents and the chancellors have the nerve to pick up the SMU, Boise State, as you mentioned, pick up 2 other schools and stay together for the sake of, as long as we stay together as the Big 12, we're going to get that going away money from Oklahoma and Texas, and we want that money. We want the severance money because we need the money, and because it would just be good to poke our fingers into their eyes. Do they have the moxie to try to hang on and survive, and thus force Texas and Oklahoma to make those payments, or are they all going to say, you know what, Ames doesn't have any loyalty to Lubbock, and if we think we can slide into the Big Ten, we might make a phone call. So, it'd be interesting to see how it is, because like you said, the Big East was a situation where 2 dominoes fell and then all the other ones followed right away. I mean, the whole thing just fell apart.
Yeah, because if the reason you're in this situation to begin with is because somebody has left, or a couple teams, couple programs have left. Therefore, the situation's already precarious. Right. Well, if 1 or 2 others leave, then the other ones aren't going to they're going to run to make the best deal that they can to save themselves and save their program. What is very ironic about what you just stated was, think about how tenuous the solidarity is in the Big 12, that they're all upset, and rightfully so, that 2 schools, the 2 biggest cash cows and biggest brands in the conference, fled and left them in a vulnerable state. So they all convened, and they all, I'm sure it was, the reports are that it was a very emotional meeting. There was a lot of resentment and a lot of bitter feelings about being betrayed. Okay, well, but they're all thinking the same thing in a sense, that they probably, if there was no money at stake, if there was no reputation at stake, if there wasn't a football program and an athletic program at stake, they would all want to stick together and see it through. But they're also thinking about, should we leave? If West Virginia gets an offer from the ACC, well, we know that the ACC is going to be around. They'll probably leave. So it's this
Right.
solidarity, but it's very tenuous, and it can flip on a dime if given the right opportunity to leave and the right amount of money potential to leave and go to another conference. So it's funny because they all band together in their resentment and bitterness, and that they were betrayed, but they may end up betraying each other in the end.
Right. They're all saying we're all in this together, right, fellas? Right? And then everybody's looking at everybody else out of the corner of their eye. You know, this is not like when Colorado left, or not like when Nebraska left, and it's not like if we were talking about not Texas and not Oklahoma, if we were talking about Texas Tech and Baylor said we just can't we can't keep up anymore. We'll get then this whole past month. Everything everybody would be talking about would be completely different. You know, it just happened to be that the two big dogs left, and I don't like it. I wish it hadn't happened. But I'm an '89 Bama grad, so I'm an SEC homer, and you know, I don't blame the SEC. What were they going to say? No, I mean that wasn't going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Greg Sankey was not going to say no to traditional programs and all that money and everything that it means. I mean, he's you know, so I can't say that I blame the SEC. If there's anybody, if you want to point fingers and say this is your fault, then you got to point the fingers at Norman and Austin, because they're the ones that made this happen, not the corporate office in Birmingham. It was the chancellors and the powers that be in Norman and Austin that made this happen.
I think one of the things
I just thought I would call in.
No, I think it's a great point. You made a lot of great points. And I think at the core of some of these issues is the same thing that you see in politics. There are people that get into politics with great intentions, but they get sucked into a situation in an environment and a game in which you can only survive by not the best of intent. Therefore, they try to, I think if you went to the heart of hearts of all these people involved in power, most of them would love to see college athletics go back to a place where it's more stable, it's geographic, it makes sense. The money involved isn't crazy and out of control, and you know, athletics are placed in their proper perspective and all those things, but they're not going to survive if they're the one person who acts like that and tries to reduce hours in which the football players practice and all those things to try to reverse the trends. That they're not going to survive as a individual leading a program or a conference, or their conference isn't going to survive. So they go along with the flow, and this is what you've got. This is the result.
Well, nobody wants to be the guy who's real happy with his flip phone. He loves his flip phone. He can remember when you couldn't carry a phone in your pocket, and he thinks the flip phone is the best thing he ever had. And every single person that he meets has gone away from a flip phone. He doesn't want to be the last guy holding one, you know. And that's where I'm afraid a lot of these ADs are looking around going, how do I report to my president? How do I report to my chancellors? And they're the ones that are making the vote, by the way. It's not the ADs who are making these votes. It's the presidents of these universities. But none of the ADs want to go to their boss and say, here's the bag, I'm still holding it.
Yeah, I heard I was just going to say, I heard the former Big Ten commissioner, Jim Delaney, speak on 2 occasions, and I completely believe what he stated, that he played varsity basketball at North Carolina. You can't get any higher than that in the late 60s, early 70s, like around 1968, 70. And he just kind of made a comparison between what was demanded of those athletes and what the environment was like and the competition and the money involved and all that versus today. And obviously there's no comparison. We treat these guys like professional athletes,
Right.
both in regards to how we pamper them, but also what we demand of them. And he didn't, it seemed like a reasonable schedule back then. Like, even though you're a varsity basketball player at North Carolina, you go to class, you practice for 2 hours after class, it seemed like a reasonable schedule. So he would have loved to bring college athletics back to the way it was played and the way it was structured 50 years ago. But if he did that, he wouldn't have his job as Big Ten commissioner. So he has to go along with making the moves to get the Big Ten in position to compete. So he expanded and grabbed Nebraska and Maryland and Rutgers, and he signs big TV contracts, and he does all that. Or else he wouldn't, but he tries to do his best to, like the politician who's well-meaning. He's caught up in this rat race, but you try to weave within that some good things to try to keep some balance and keep academics a priority and do some things to do some good, but you're basically on the treadmill with everybody else in the rat race.
Yeah, it's the old Otto von Bismarck thing. It's the world the way you want it to be versus the world the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, thanks for taking the call, Mark. I'll drop into the comment section and appreciate everybody's patience.
Well, thank you so much for the call. Appreciate that. All right. I'm going to ask that I think, let's see, where do we stand right now? We came on, oh my goodness, we came on at 7. It's 10:10. Okay. I'm going to take the calls that are here. And I've got to acknowledge this super chat. Thank you so much for that. So we've got buyers weighing in again here. Thank you so much again for the contribution. Ohio State is moving to a 4-2-5 defensive scheme to fix the pass defense. 4-2-5. Yep. The addition of JTT and Jack Sawyer. Is this a top 10 defense? Okay. Well, JTT is just stepping on campus, and I know he's a phenomenal athlete, arguably the best player in the country, and Jack Sawyer the same thing. They still are freshmen. So what can we expect? Look at Zach Harrison. He was a decent to good player as a true freshman, and he was as highly touted as those guys. So let's not expect those guys to be racking up 18 sacks each. So it's phenomenal what they've got with their defensive line, but their linebackers are all new. And I know that a lot of Ohio State fans are looking forward to more athletic play at linebacker, but they are inexperienced. And the defensive secondary is going to be better. It can't be worse. I don't know that this is a top 10 defense in the country. It is a top 10 defensive talent team in the country. No question about that. It's a top 3 or 4 talented defense in the country, but I think they're going to have to play much better and find some answers to reach top 10 defensive status. I don't think the linebackers are good enough, and the secondary is going to be much improved, but not to top 10 status. The defensive line might be the best or second best in the country. The linebackers in the secondary more like top 30. So let's shake it out to a top 25 defense. How about that? All right, let's pick off these calls. We've got, again, I'm not going to attempt to try to determine the voice recognition. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's 28AD.
Oh, hey, how's it going?
It's going. How about yourself?
I'm good.
Good. Just a quick question for you, Mark. For about the last 10 days or so, of course, we've been hearing about how this the move with the SEC, Oklahoma and Texas is a bad move. It's terrible for college football. It's destroying competitive balance, this, that, and the other. My question for you tonight is, what's the last big move in college football that you would deem as being a positive move for the game? Is it the playoff? Is it any of the other conference realignments? Is it the transfer portal? Because it feels like to me like all the moves that college football has been making have not been good for the game per se. So when's the last move that you would look at and say that was a good move for college football? That was a great move. They got that right.
And I don't even think that this NIL is good for the game. I think it's a must. I think it's good for the players and good for them. I think it is the right thing to do because I think that anybody in this society, in a free society, should have a right to earn income. But I think it's going to be detrimental to the game. But I don't think that matches the freedom and liberties of individuals, so that they need those. But oh my goodness, wow! Because the playoff, shoot, I've been rooting for a playoff, and shoot, when I was 15 years old, wrote a playoff proposal in 1984 in high school. So I've been wanting a playoff forever. But once they unveiled it, I was like, that's a playoff. It improves the situation. I gave it kind of that Jim Mora tint to the way I say that too.
Playoff?
That's a playoff. So it is. It's an invitational. I've been trying to discipline myself for years now to just call it an invitational and not even use the term playoff. But yeah, that was a positive. It was better than what we had before, just like the BCS championship game was better than the vote. The last move that was truly good for college football. Yeah. Just adding more games on television, but that was a no-brainer. That was, again, a money grab. It wasn't anybody doing anything noble. It was just basically saying, oh, we got to cram as many games on and start more networks. And so instead of just having Fox, we're going to have FS1 and FS2, and just having ESPN, ESPN2, we're going to have ESPNU and the SEC network and the ACC network and the Big Ten. We're going to that's just a money grab. That's not anybody doing anything for the sake of doing something good for someone. That's just, let's make more money. But that's good for the college football fan. Just so many games on that you almost I find myself frustrated on a Saturday afternoon, especially since I feel now, I hope nobody takes this too much of an extreme. I feel a little bit of pressure to know everything. And so I watch as much as possible and take in as much as possible, but I'm sitting here with and I'm not the type person that can multitask that well. So I will admit to that. So I would rather just watch one game, but there's always 7 games on at once that I want to see. And so I've limited myself to 3 screens, and that's as best I can do. And I still feel like I can't fully concentrate on one thing. And I got 3 notebooks at the same time, jotting down notes on all 3 games. And then when one of them goes to break, I'll try to find a 4th game, and I'm jotting stuff down. So I took you off on another path, but I'm just saying the proliferation of all the television networks and now digital feeds providing all these games for the college football fan, it now gives the East Carolina fan, the FIU fan, the ability to, I think they can watch their team play every week, even at that level.
Yep.
So I think that's a good thing, as opposed to, if you're an FIU fan, I don't even know when they existed. They didn't start. I didn't want to pick a date that was that, because it was Howard Schnellenberger that started FAU. So FIU, whenever these schools started, like a South Alabama just started 10 years ago. And I'm sure that their fans, I'm almost certain, can watch them on TV or digital every game. Well, those kind of schools, my goodness, even 25 years ago, could only be seen maybe once or twice a season.
Right.
So I do think that that's legitimately a good thing, even though it was done for money. But for those fan bases where they can keep up with their teams, and it gives some level of incentive for some players to sign at those schools, knowing, hey, even at a UAB, I'm going to be on ESPNU and whatever other networks are out there. I can't determine who else would be showing UAB games, but that would be, again, they're accessible and available all over.
Right. Yeah, I remember, Mark, back in the day, not even that long ago. I think it's probably around 2000 or so, because I remember the year OU won the championship back in 2000, and I remember watching a lot of OU games on something that was called ESPN Game Plan.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And we could get games, and they were pay-per-view. We had to pay though extra on your cable provider. I had a Time Warner at the time, and you'd have to pay extra, like $9 or something a game to watch those games.
Well, you know what
Of course,
they
now
used to
everything's
do
on it.
back then was they would regionalize the 3:30 game. They wouldn't do it at noon, but they would regionalize the 3:30 games, and they usually had 4 or 5 games. And if you bought a USA Today, it would always be in the paper, and they would have it color coded what games were going to what regions in the country.
Yeah.
And
the map.
And I remember always like dissecting that and having, if there's something like that to be displayed, I'm always going to find something wrong with it. So I would be like, well, why are they showing that game in Morgantown West? That portion of West Virginia shouldn't be the Penn State Illinois game. They should probably be showing the Kentucky, Georgia Tech game, because and I would look at that thing and figure out what they did a little bit wrong, and then that fit perfectly into my first job at ESPN, because we dealt with those things all the time, trying to make the right switch to make sure the regions went to the right, and it was always a mess because the games at noon went too long, and trying to figure out, okay, as soon as that game's over, we can now send that region to that game where it had to stay with this game, and it was a nightmare.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a circus.
Yes, it was.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to see what you thought was the last good move in college football. I guess the proliferation of TV will probably cover it. The fact that we can pretty much all see our teams all the time.
Yeah.
But since that's been a while, and since then it seems like every other move we've made has been kind of like, But I'll let you go, Mark. I know you got other callers. I appreciate you taking my call.
All right, 288028. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark. Bye-bye.
For the longest time, I botched his handle, and he was very forgiving and very patient with me until I finally got it. All right, a couple more calls on the line. Welcome to the Voice of College Football.
Yeah, Mark, this is CBR Sooner. How are you doing?
I am doing well. What's going on?
I'm doing good. I just wanted to talk some OU football with you.
Sounds good to me. What you got?
All right. So I want to talk about the nose tackle and defensive tackle depth for Oklahoma this year. So we got Jalen Redmond at defensive tackle and Perrion Winfrey at nose.
Okay.
And after that, it's a lot of unknowns. I just wanted to know your opinion from a national perspective on what you thought about the depth.
Well, fortunately, I don't know if you've had an opportunity to catch our Oklahoma show on Friday afternoons. Have you seen that?
No, I have.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Very good. So we got Jason Ray from Last Word on College Football, and we're certainly open to bringing on some other folks. But so Jason does a fine job in keeping me updated on what's going on with Oklahoma football. So I certainly am aware of the talent of those two, who, when we listed our top 10 defensive linemen in the country, I did a little research on those two because Jason did not list them in the top 10. And I came up with 17 more defensive linemen that I looked into, but didn't come up with anyone past those two with Oklahoma. So it appears as though you're slightly thin there after those two.
I completely agree with that. You know, a lot of the OU fans, there's like a division and message boards and things like that.
Yep.
It's people that worship our inside defensive tackle coach and the other side. And I'm farther to the other side of it because we have not recruited defensive tackles very well. And from at the prep level, we've had to settle for JUCOs, and aside from Perrion Winfrey, none of them have, been much in the playmaking aspect, aside from just, quote, quality depth, if that makes any sense. And Jalen Redmond was recruited as an outside linebacker. So it's just kind of worrisome for me for this season.
Well, if you look
and
at
beyond.
if you look at Phil Steele's rankings, and I've got his magazine right in front of me because there is no publication in the world that packs this kind of information into one offering. It's ridiculous. Like it takes you like 4 days just to read one page because there's just everything. It's coded. It's not like reading. It's everything's coded. So anyway, I just took a quick glance through this because I knew that he had rated the Oklahoma defensive line to be extremely high. And yes, he's got them at number 3 in the country. The one comment I will make is that Ronnie Perkins, of course, was a great player. And it was my thought in watching Oklahoma do some things defensively that we haven't seen them do and be as effective as they've been since the late 2000s, 08, of course, 09, in that range, that he was the main reason for, he was a bigger reason than any other player, in my opinion, on that defensive unit for the success that they had last year.
Are we talking about Perry on Winfrey?
No, I'm talking about Perkins.
Oh, Perkins. Yes, I agree. 100%. I'm sorry about that. And Perkins is a defensive end, and we've done an extremely good job, recruiting defensive ends. It's been the defensive tackle position over the last however many years that we have just not, done well. I believe our last 4-star defensive tackle that was a defensive tackle coming into Oklahoma that made a big impact was Neville Gallimore was the last one at the prep level. And that was like the 2016 class. So if OU is going to do anything in the SEC in the front 7, then they have got to start recruiting defensive tackles better.
Oh, there's no question about that. That is a main difference between the two leagues. For sure.
I agree. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you being in the live chat. I see your handle from time to time. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. I thought we had one more caller after this one. Let's please, we've been on the line for almost 3.5 hours. I'm just going to take these 2 calls. Welcome in. What's going on?
Hey, not much. How are you doing tonight?
I am doing well. I feel like I'm attached to this seat at this point, but we're going to get moving on.
Well,
and get a little dinner here pretty soon. What's on your mind?
Are you getting any this booming and banjo enjoying your show? As always, you getting any rest? You don't look like you rested right now.
I don't seem well rested.
You don't seem like you look. You work all the time.
Well, we're trying to build something here, so we're doing our best, and we appreciate all of you supporting us.
Well, you're doing well. Hey, you know what, Dan? You know what Texas has that other people don't have?
What's that?
Oil rigs. A lot of them. They got a lot of oil rigs, and that's been their story. And they hadn't been anything since 1969. Now, on it, they're talking about everybody's been talking about biggest shifts, paradigm shifts. Let me ask you this. This is just my opinion. One of the most important ones. Wasn't it 1969, their only national championship before, 2006 around there?
Mm-hmm.
That was the last all-white national champion, wasn't it?
I believe so. That's interesting that you say that because I did hear that somewhat recently. I'm almost positive that's correct.
I'm pretty sure. And then shortly, and for the good and for all the answers and rebukes to the woke world, that was great progress. And we got first millionaire potentially being a young African American. So good for him, DJ Ongale. My question there, since that's around the time Barry Switzer started recruiting the black athlete from Texas, and that's really one of the seminal moments in Darrell Royal starting to go out and getting those particular athletes to play for the University of Texas is, you start beating them. And so that'd be my vote in something that they finally made the right move after a long time.
Oh, in terms of
and let me ask
integration.
you, I'm going to give you a little trivia. You got a little room for trivia tonight?
Trivia, yes.
Okay, Boston College.
I love to be challenged with some trivia. What you got?
Well, you're good, and I might be incorrect on some of these, but I'm going to give my best shot. Going back to the Hail Mary 1984 Flutie
Yeah.
and Boston College on Miami, who was the receiver that caught the catch?
It was either, Flutie's brother was on that team, Darren Flutie, but I don't believe he caught it. I think it was, I can't think of his first name, Phelan. I can't think of his first name.
You're good.
I can't think of what was his first name. Darren?
Alex Trebek would be proud of him.
Darren Phelan?
Gerald Phelan.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, Gerald Phelan.
Okay.
That's pretty damn close right there.
Phelan.
Hey, my question. What's that?
Phelan. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Gerald Phelan. My question is, I've been wanting to ask you this too. But last couple of you people have been talking about the best college football team ever, and there's debate on that 2019 LSU and was it what 95, 96 Cornhuskers around that time. Now, my opinion, and this being your neck of the woods, because we thought it got a lot of scar tissue from these years being in Oklahoma. Soon I was watching the game when Miami broke Troy Aikman's leg, and Jamel Holloway came in. That was about 1984, 1985.
85.
And remember old Frank Burrows doing the...
Oh, absolutely, with Keith Jackson.
Frank Burrows said, that's Jamel. Huh?
Yeah, he used to do the games with Keith Jackson.
Yes, sir. Sorry, I got a new phone yesterday, and I can't operate the damn thing worth it on. Anyway, TJ, he said, that's Jamel Holloway from Carson City, California. He played Pop Warner football. And I remember that in the introduction, and there we go. We started cutting loose. But my question is, those Miami teams, those couple of years, to me, they were the best ever, in my opinion. And they were just playing criminal. They had more criminals than we did at Oklahoma. Remember old Buster Rhymes shooting that machine gun?
I do, number 88.
He didn't.
Sure.
Yeah, he was. Buster Rhymes, I think, was 4. The Keith Jackson was 88.
Keith Jackson was 88.
Oh, the year was 88.
Buster Rhymes.
It wasn't too far down the road from me.
Yeah, Buster Rhymes.
That old Jamel Holloway wearing that fur coat on the sideline.
I believe Buster Rhymes then played for the Oilers and the Vikings. Is that correct?
Maybe so. He was a hell of a talent. He caught those couple games. He got that flea flicker and ran that ball for us. He was being a Miami boy himself. That's where he's from. But those teams, you go back to that particular era, and and do you remember Jamel Holloway wearing the fur coat on the sideline?
I do remember that. Yeah, you had some characters on the sideline. Of course, Bosworth had to sit out an Orange Bowl game, and he was
that's right.
Yeah, on the sideline for that game. But Jamel Holloway, yeah, boy, could he between him and Charles Thompson.
Who was it?
In terms of running that option.
It was that game. Yeah, it was that T-shirt he was wearing he got banned from. Who was the linebacker from Miami? It was that year. One of them got hurt. This falls in, but those Miami teams, you had Testaverde, you had Smith, Glenn
Alonzo
Braxton.
Highsmith.
Yeah, Alonzo Highsmith. I think it was Glenn Braxton, maybe. Benny Blades. He had a couple of Blades brothers.
Yeah.
I think Irvin,
Al
Michael
Blades,
Irvin,
Benny
Jerome
Blades.
Brown.
Yeah.
Was it George Myra Jr.? Was that the linebacker that played opposite Bosworth? He had something to follow.
Yeah,
They had an All-American linebacker. What's that?
Russell Maryland.
Well, yeah, forgot about him. Dallas Cowboys went to the Dallas at the same time around Tony Casillas went.
Tony Casillas. Yeah.
Yeah, I ran into him at the racetrack. They were together after they joined the Dallas Cowboys together down at Remington Park, Youngstown, Ohio group running horses in Oklahoma for the first time. Anyway, who was the what's your opinion? How would you rate those teams? Would you make an argument they were the best ever? In my mind, they were. What would be your argument against it? And I'll let you go. And I'm grateful for your shows. You work hard. You put on tireless content, and appreciate it. So give me your pros for them being the best team ever, which I make the argument for and against. Take care, man.
Thank you so much for the call. Appreciate that. So to answer his comment without doing obviously any research, this is all off the top of my head, would be that those Miami teams had arguably the best pro talent, but I think that the teams that Miami produced in 2001 and 02 had better pro talent, but they weren't as dominant on the field against as difficult schedules. So here's the deal. When Miami was playing in the late 80s, so they had their dominant teams in so, of course, they won the national championship in 83. They had a bit of a down year in 84 that lost the Fiesta Bowl to UCLA. 85, they had a great season at 10-1 and would have vied for a national championship, but they got inexplicably just trounced by Tennessee in the Sugar Bowl 35-7. Then they, of course, had the run to the national championship game at the Fiesta Bowl against Penn State and were upset as a huge favorite in 86. Then in 87 is when they kind of kicked down the door and kicked it in. And 87, they dominated. 88, outside of the 1-point loss to Notre Dame, which cost them a national championship, they dominated. 89, they dominated for another national championship. 1990, I don't think there was any question. They did not win a national championship. They did not deserve to win a national championship because they blew a couple games, but they beat Texas 46-3 in the Cotton Bowl, a 10-1 Texas team. Colorado and Georgia Tech split the national championship. Miami was the best team in the country by far in 1990. And then in 91, they won another undefeated national championship. So between 87 and 91, those teams were just, that's 5 seasons. They were the best team in college football for that collection of years. And I would argue that because of their schedule, they played an extremely difficult independent schedule. They were still an independent, so their schedule consisted a lot of Florida State, of course, a lot of Penn State, a lot of Syracuse, and others, Notre Dame. And then later, when they had the dominant teams around 2000, they were playing Big East schedules that weren't anywhere close to as comparable as the schedules that they had that were stacked schedules in the late 80s, early 90s. So for that distinction, I would take those late 80s, early 90s teams over the 2000, 01, and 02 teams that had more, even though the NFL talent on the teams that we discussed was ridiculous, it was even taken to a higher degree in that 2001 period. All right. Let's take our final call of the night. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, man, this is Luis. How's it going?
It's going just fine. What's going on tonight?
So I got a quick question for you.
Sure.
Appreciate what you do and everything.
Thank you.
Found you last year. Great show. I feel like since the announcement of Texas and OU to the SEC, it's been nonstop content on YouTube and on ESPN, all that stuff. I feel like though, like 85% of the talking heads are talking out of their ass, and I'm not quite sure if you can provide any insight on, like, hey, you know, this is what somebody who knows what they're talking about sounds like, or this is what somebody who knows what they're talking about, you know, does or, you know, will do to make sure that they have sources for what they're saying. Because otherwise, I kind of just feel like I spent the past couple of days listening to people who have no access or connection to the conversation that actually happens inside the boardrooms. And I'm kind of like, okay, well, now's the time to really figure out who's worth watching and listening and stuff like that. So I'll hang up. I appreciate you waiting to take my call, but that's just kind of the gist of what I'm looking for, is maybe some guidance on how you navigate between, people that are just some talking heads, although they sound pretty good, versus people that are actually source. So appreciate what you do. I'm going to hang up now. Have a good night.
Thank you so much for the call. Appreciate that. And so I will take this graphic off so people can see me speak, but wanted to remind everyone that we've got post-game shows that are team-specific. Post-game shows, we're excited about this. This was the big announcement tonight. SEC, Florida, Texas A&M, Iowa, Michigan from the Big Ten, Florida State, Miami from the ACC, Oklahoma, and Notre Dame, with more to be announced to come. Okay. So that's a great comment and an interesting observation that he had, because in this world that we live in, regardless of whether you're a news person, sports person, whatever information you're looking for, there's just a glut of information, and that can be a positive because it's out there. But who do you believe and who don't you believe? Okay. I will state here that I pretty much have 3 buckets in which I state my response to anybody's questions. And I will state that either this is a fact, I know this, I'm telling you this is the way this works, this is complete logic, this is a fact. The Washington Huskies and Michigan Wolverines played in the 1981 Rose Bowl. That is a fact. Michigan won the game 23-6. That's a fact. You can go look it up. Okay, so I will state facts and tell you these are facts and argue with anyone. Then there's this bucket where I will say, okay, I've done my homework. I think I have a pretty good grasp on this situation, but this isn't a fact. This is my opinion. This is what I believe should happen or is the best way to go. Then there's going to be certain times where I'm going to say, this NIL business would be a great example. Who knows what's going to happen? Now, I can tell you, I've been around the block a few times, like many of you have, so I can come up with certain theories of what might happen or what could be the pitfalls and the problems, and I'll throw them out there. But as soon as I state that one way could be an issue, I turn around and say, but on the other hand, it could work this way because we just don't know. And then I'll throw out a 4th bucket where I just flat out say, I don't know. I don't know. I can't know everything, and I don't know that. Does anybody in the live chat have any information regarding that? Somebody asked me to dissect like Marshall's back 7 on defense a couple months ago, and I don't know. I don't watch Marshall. I can only watch so many teams. I don't know. So that's what I told him. I don't know. I have no idea. So that leads us to your dilemma in trying to determine who does know what they're talking about. Well, the only way that, and this is going to cause a little bit of homework, the only way that you can know is to track people's performance. People continue to be the person that they are. Very few people change. Incompetent people don't become competent people, and competent people sometimes get a little lazy and start to become incompetent people. That happens. Sometimes you will have somebody who's an industry standard and they're really good at what they do, but later in life they get a little lazy and they fall off the wagon and aren't as sharp. That happens, but generally competent people, capable people continue to be so, and other people who have proven to be incapable are never going to show you anything else. I will say this: stick to college football people, number one, if you're trying to find out college football information. So do not listen to Max Kellerman and Stephen A. Smith, because I'm not discrediting them or their intelligence. It doesn't have to do with that. It has to do with you can only know so much about so much. You can't be an expert on the NFL and the NBA and college basketball, college football and boxing and all this other stuff. You cannot be an expert on all that. They are presented with big college football topics and big college football games. They don't watch college football every week. They don't know. They don't know. They don't know. There was a somewhat famous incident that happened a few years ago involving Stephen A. Smith and a NFL situation in which, again, He's expected to know over the course of a 2-hour show, they're going to throw him a bunch of NBA situations and NBA trades and games and NFL stuff and college football stuff and on down the line and whatever happened, boxing, Tiger Woods, all this stuff. He doesn't know all of that. Understand as well that people see this earpiece. I don't have anybody else working with me. I'm a one-man band. This earpiece is only so I can set up the audio board and take the calls, and it can function technically. But those guys have earpieces so they can be fed information. They have researchers on the side who are pounding things out and going, oh, yeah, 1980 Rose Bowl. Yeah, that season, Michigan beat Washington 23-6. So they can say, yeah, it's similar to when Schembechler took on that Don James team in Washington, 23-6, Rose Bowl game. Okay. So not that they don't have anything to bring to the table, but be a little bit leery of those people that have to follow every sport. When I was a sportscaster for 9 years, of course, I reported on every sport, but I wasn't seen as an expert. I was not an analyst. I was just a sportscaster. So that's different. You had to know the sports and know how they work and how they're played and what the rules are, but you didn't have to be an expert. Those people are asked to be experts, and there's no way you can be an expert. So my first point would be focus on people that just follow college football. You want to know about college football, follow and listen to people that just talk about college football all the time. And then secondly, you just have to follow the track record. You just have to listen to the person and understand that people copy off each other. If they hear somebody else say something that sounds intelligent or makes a whole lot of sense, then they will copy that. We're in a copycat league as broadcasters, just like copycats in sports. They copy schemes and formations off of each other. So, for example, I make it very clear, like if there are recruiting commits, you guys are big into recruiting. I'm not, but I got to stay on top of it. And so for example, if Ohio State, they had a decommit from Jakeem Singletary the other day. So I posted a video. Did I know anything about that situation? No. I clearly state Jakeem Singletary decommits from Ohio State. And I read it right from the 247 Sports Composite. I say, this is straight from 247 Sports. And I'll even read the scouting reports on these guys. This is the scouting report from so-and-so, the recruiting analyst at 247 Sports. And I don't lay claim to it as this is my analysis. I watched the huddle tape on Jakeem Singletary. And no, I reference and I give credit to whoever originated the information. But the rest of it's my opinion. So it originates from me. But if I get information from information, now, obviously, if I'm looking at Bear Bryant's record, that could be looked up a million different places. So nobody originated that information. It's there for anybody to find anywhere. So I don't credit that, but if somebody had an original thought or analysis on something, I'll credit them. I'll say, the Texas-Oklahoma story just broke that they're leaving for the SEC, and I'll jump on here, and I had absolutely no time to prepare for that. Zero. So I just went straight to the ESPN article and said, we're going to read through this together. Mark Schlabach's reporting, I give credit to that and to that individual. So all I can say is, number one, I would rely on people that follow that particular sport all the time. And they're not freelancers who are expected to know everything about every sport. And number two, that their track record is proven reliable. And do they sound intelligent? Do the opinions that they put forward, do they seem logical? Do they make sense? That's about the best I can do for you. But I appreciate the call. I appreciate the question. And again, I had asked for that to be the final one of the night. So I'm sorry for whomever's on the line, but we have been here for 3 hours and 48 minutes. So I don't know that I'm doing any of the work that I intended to do tonight, which would be posting more prediction videos, because I need to do that. and I was going to come up with some more angles to the college football craziness that may ensue. And I also, the big announcement tonight again was that we were going to have post-game shows on the SEC channel Thursday night, Saturday night, Sunday. We're going to have Florida and Texas A&M post, Iowa, Michigan post, Florida State, Miami, Oklahoma, Notre Dame post, and there are other teams to come right here at the Voice of College Football. And for those of you who are a glutton for punishment just to sit and listen to me all day on Saturday, I'll be here with the national show. Also, keep in mind that this bit of handiwork right there, and of course, I've got the original now since it's been sent to me. Go to Tri-State Sketch. Tri-State, I screw this up all the time. Tri-State Wood Sketch. I don't even know what I'm talking about at this point after 4 hours of talking. TriStateWoodsketch.com. TriStateWoodsketch.com, and you send them your photo of whatever you want. Your girlfriend, your wife, your whoever, whatever, beach scene, wood scene, whatever it is. Send it to them. You pick out the surface, and then they put that together, which is phenomenal. And I've got about 10 examples of these. So this isn't just the only one. I've seen more work out of them, and it's amazing. So if you drop my name, you buy one, you get one free if you say, we heard this from the Voice of College Football. We are going to have shirts and other gear at some point. We're working on that as well. And some of the things that I work on, all the things that I work on throughout the day basically take me away from trying to know a lot about college football. So that's the only down point to all of that. So I don't have the advantage of a lot of the people that you guys follow in regards to, I'm not talking about people on YouTube. I'm talking about the heavy hitters that get to just have everything fed to them, and they just sit and read and talk to people all day. Because we're building a channel here, but it's a labor of love. All right, everyone. Appreciate all the contributions that came in, the great comments and so forth in the live chat. Appreciate all of you. We're going to be live tomorrow night at 8 o'clock on the Nebraska channel, 8 Eastern time on the Nebraska channel with Josh Banderas, former Husker, and of course, Greg Peterson from Husker Online. We will see you all right then.